touch, feel it, hear and see. The power to touch, feel, hear and see. From within your mind, no one else can find the life that you inspire. From another place, not from outer space, from someplace even higher. From the stars, from the stars. I can touch, I can feel, I can hear and see. So much more than a fantasy. I can run, I can jump, I can dance and sing. Believe in yourself and do anything. Believe in yourself and do anything. From within your mind, no one else can find the life that you inspire. From another place, not from outer space, from someplace even higher. From the stars, from the stars. I can walk, I can talk, I can listen and learn as the wheels in my mind begin to turn. But I'll never forget what you've given to me. The power to touch, feel it, hear and see. The power to touch, feel, hear and see. From within your mind, no one else can find the life that you inspire. From another place, not from outer space, from someplace higher. From the stars,
Hello everyone, welcome to another Chud Watch. How are you all doing? I'm Hannah. Hope you're having a good one. I see we're already on a boost train. Thank you very much for that. Let's see where we are. 22% to level 2. Purple Nickel, thanks for 23 months. Humiliated Grapes, thanks for 12 months. Nope, nopey nope, thanks for 8 months. Overthought, thanks for gifting a sub. I'm feeling a lot better today, thank you. Yeah, sorry, we were supposed to do the patron-only live stream yesterday, along with another kind of normal stream. But I was not feeling good yesterday. I slept wrong or something, and my neck and everything was so screwed up, it was giving me a headache, and I just felt like shit. So, we will be doing a patron-only live stream this upcoming Sunday. And I'm gonna put a poll on Patreon to see what you guys want, people who are patrons. Chibbers, thanks for 19 months. Alley Cat, thanks for 16 months. Siberian Winter says, well, there's the bits I meant to cheer. Savage Shulk, thanks for 20 bits, says, feel better, Hannah. Thank you. I feel a lot better. Harold Elbelman the 4th, thanks for 15 months. Says 15 months, that second sub baby is coming along nicely. Also, my hand fasting to my partner, my hand fastening, to my partner of 11 years is this Friday. Congratulations. Who's your friend with 100 bits says, I'm glad you're feeling better. Thank you. And Digis Arkaya says, more bits. Speedy Yoshi, thanks for 20 months, says 20 months. Everett GA, thanks for 7 months, says, hope you're feeling better today. Glad you took a day for you. Yeah, me too. I felt guilty about it. I always feel guilty whenever I have to take a day off or whatever. That's the thing about, like, being your own boss, is whenever you take time off, there's, like, a nagging thing in your brain that's like, you should be working right now. You could be doing something, like, that could help you be successful. But, either way. Puka, thanks for 150 bits. Bumble Homestead, what would you like for the hats off? 85% to level 3 on the boost train. Just preserving the purple flowers. Death to Jadora. Thank you. Garf Shield, thanks for gifting a tier 1 sub. but from someplace even higher, ramblers are. Level 3 complete, 8% to level 4. If you didn't see the title, by the way, I assume you did, but John Doyle's back with a 2-hour video. Chibbers says, thanks for the content. I'm sure the Chud harvest is bountiful right now with the Twitter mess. It's just nice seeing Twitter die in real time. Twitter's a nightmare. I spend a lot of time on it, but it's not good. Bumble Homestead says, Doyle is back and he must live very close to me in Texas. Shudder. How much to retire, destroy the Jadora? That was a gift, so I have to keep the Jadora. And it will forever be something I wear on stream. And I will be a denim, milady. Ted Cruz nearly got brained with a beer can. It's a shame nearly's in that sentence. The lady. It's good. Then my mind begin to turn. I do have a great cleanse for us at some point. It's gonna be epic. It's from Alex Chud, the guy who invented the, quote, immortality ring things, and the guy that did that video where he talked all about how much he loves incest porn. He's got a great video someone sent me, and we'll watch that as a cleanse at some point. Cassie! My kitty is asking for pets. 22% to level 4. Did he find hentai yet? He's probably familiar with hentai. Life that you inspire from another place, not from outer space, but from some place even higher. Ramblers are. Oh, kitty! Pierre Squire says, look, I'm not a stranger to incest or incest porn, but that guy takes it too far. Thanks for sharing, Pierre Squire. Yeah, Doyle had been doing a lot of that slightly offensive show that was carried by The Blaze with, what was his name? Something Schaefer, like Josh Schaefer or something. Anyway, that guy got caught up in some kind of, he's allegedly a creeper, which isn't shocking. I don't know. Elijah, that's his name. Minute left on the boost train. Believe in yourself and do anything. Uh-oh. There's a minute left on the hype train, and Danzy has a new song. Let's listen. Tea with Goblin says, morning all, T-minus 1 hour until I scuffle into my doctor's office and ask in no uncertain terms to be put on low-dose tea. She's already indicated she would be amenable to giving me a referral, so here goes. Bring on the peach fuzz. I wish you luck. 30 seconds left. Save the train, chat. Do it for Danzy.
I came to California 20 years ago. I started a whole new life. And I have been so thrilled because my American dream came true. I thank the pioneer immigrants to embrace the diversity here today. Cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away.
Moira Soma with 500 bits says, oh my god, there's northern lights where I live. I live in the south of Norway, and we almost never get northern lights. This is very special. It's really the most beautiful thing. I'm glad I can pair it with Danzy for you. Thank you. May you have another? Yes. Nerdtacular, thanks for 8 months. Would I talk to Danzy if possible? No. Stuckmet the Wise with 500 bits says, can we stop it now? I'm poor. Well, you have to listen. We started it. 73 Motorcycle Modem, thanks for gifting a sub.
And I'm proud to be a Californian where there's freedom and diversity. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave those rights to me. And I'm gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there's no doubt I love this land. God bless the great California.
That's a good point. I wouldn't talk with Danzy, but I will sing with Danzy if she wants.
From Channel Islands to Lake Tahoe and Yosemite to San Diego, across the Golden Gate Bridge, from Carmel Beach to Long Beach, from Apple, Google to Disney, and Hollywood to Silicon Valley. There's pride in every California's heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be a Californian.
Like, she can't even get the timing right. Like, the yelling instead of singing is one thing, but she can't even sing, like, on time with the music. Steve of the Q says, Hannah Danzy rap battle, let's go!
When there's freedom and diversity, and I won't forget the man who died, who gave that rights to me, and I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there's no doubt I love this land. God bless the great California. And I'm proud to be a Californian where there's freedom and diversity.
Hydrate.
And I won't forget the man who died, who gave their rights to me, and I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there's no doubt I love this land. God bless the great California. Thank you. See you next song.
Okay, then. That's weird. Alright, let's get into the John Doyle. So John Doyle has returned from his long slumber beneath Mount Fuji to terrorize us all once again in a 2-hour video entitled The Plotted Undoing of the Trump Revolution. Be careful. So, this is 2 hours, 18 minutes long. Don't know how much I'm going to have to stop and talk and laugh at him or, you know, look up something he says or just ramble about why he's wrong. Don't know. But if I have to split this into 2 parts, I will. Maybe we can get through it, though. Let's see.
A couple months ago, former President Donald Trump had his private residence, Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, raided by the FBI, who had a search warrant and were operating under the guise of their investigation into his supposed handling of classified documents, which is, of course, one of 2 federal investigations that Trump is currently under.
Man, he should stop breaking the law. What a bitch.
The other one pertaining to January 6th, which is a whole other discussion fundamentally, but it's kind of the same in effect, because if you've been following the saga for a while, then you'll remember when it was President Obama illegally spying on Trump's campaign back in 2016. You'll remember
With
when
the
it was the
microwaves.
Russia collusion hoax, when it was supposed to be Mueller time. You'll remember the 2 impeachment attempts. You'll remember the literal and shameless equating of January 6th with 9/11, the incessant attack.
Don't try and overthrow the government, then. John.
Attacks on his character. Of course, every anonymously sourced tabloid scandal in between that circulated throughout the media as if they were gospel. You're talking gemstones of investigative journalism, such as the P-tape, finally all leading up to where we are now, with his most influential allies being targeted by the federal government.
When did John Doyle come back? 6 hours ago he uploaded this.
He's greeted with a subpoena from the January 6th committee. Now, there are essentially two ways of viewing this, which we'll discuss. But it's undeniably a fact that there has never been in the history of this country a political figure who, along with their allies and with their supporters, has faced a greater level of persecution at virtually every conceivable level. It's just never happened before. It's never been more syndicated. It's never been more...
That's definitely untrue. And also, Trump has committed various crimes, John. Maybe, if you don't want people to not like you, you shouldn't be fashy. People don't like fascists, John. It's not that hard.
More relentless, and it's never been more vicious. Like, this is just a fact, but people want to be like, oh, well, what about this guy? This guy got full-on assassinated. Like, okay, thank you. I hadn't considered that. Very measured, very insightful contribution. Thank you for that. But the point is that you cannot point to another example in American history where this level of persecution has been ordered against a political figure, let alone a former president. And people who don't like Trump will say, well, it's because he broke the law and he was mean. It's like, okay.
Not so much the mean part. It's the breaking the law part, mostly.
Alleged error in filing documents.
Is he still bitter about the Disney thing? Probably.
According to the National Archives. So what, he pissed off the top librarian in the nation? Yeah, lock him in a cell.
John, he stole classified documents that he had no right to declassify. Like, even some of the things that he had are things that you can't just unilaterally declassify even as the president. Nuclear shit.
Throw away the...
Fenekagami says, Mueller said he was guilty, but because our government is cucked by powerful people, nothing happened.
This is just one of the sobering realities of politics, which has always been the case. And people know this, but they don't actively...
John, by the way, you said the MAGA hat was never coming off? Haven't seen it in a long time. What's that about?
Think about it and trace its implications, and that's that there is no such thing as a nation of laws. The people who pull the strings are always going to reward and make exceptions for themselves and for their friends, and they are always going to persecute their enemies. And we don't have time to get into the actual criminal syndicates in this country. We certainly don't have time to point out all of the hypocrisy. But if your actual argument is that this level of persecution against Trump is warranted because he didn't handle documents correctly,
no, it's warranted because he broke a bunch of crimes. But yeah, the investigations into the documents are directly because of the document stealing. Like, if you steal from... How do I put this? You're not being persecuted if you, steal a bag of Doritos and you get caught. You're not being persecuted. You did a crime and you're being investigated for it. What a weird hill to die on, John. Cashel Gladio says, I suppose if raging Christo-fascists like John are perpetually unhappy, then it's good news for the rest of humanity.
Cited a riot, and as a billionaire Manhattan businessman, he maybe got a little creative with his taxes. You're just not a serious person. Just say you hate...
Got creative with his taxes. I thought you guys were the party of law and order. Is it that, or is it just, whatever, cheat on your taxes and steal classified documents, and whatever, he's a Republican and pushing for fascist policies, so, that's cool, I guess.
Trump because you think he's mean. There would actually be more dignity in that, but you don't have to lie. Because if you asked any person in the street about insider trading that goes on in DC, about the corruption, about the exploitation of children, the warmongering, the traffic...
John, whataboutism isn't going to do anything here. I would agree. Yes, Nancy Pelosi, for instance, should be investigated for insider trading. Everyone in Congress probably should be. Congress should be disallowed from owning stocks. I agree. That has nothing to do with Trump's crimes.
The planned demolition of our country. Most people would agree, but most people are also sheep, and therefore they won't extrapolate and ask themselves, why is it that none of those people are ever being treated the
Psychotropic Thunder, thanks for 20 months.
way that Trump is being treated?
I don't think any of those people got a bunch of people to openly try and break into the Capitol, succeed in breaking in, and then try and, go after members of Congress to try and make an election not get certified. It's kind of a big deal, John.
Are we really supposed to believe that we've like designed a system where all of the best and most virtuous and most noble people have occupied the highest levels of power? What you come to realize if you're an honest person is that everybody has baggage, everybody has dirt. There are literally people whose job it is to like find all these things out about you, to do opposition research and find out what you've got buried in your closet. And so what you come to realize is that the distinction in politics isn't so much about who's a perfect person and who's not, but rather who's actually serving the system and who's actually challenging the system. People who claim to be challenging the system on the left are propped up as poster children. They get to pose on magazine covers because they're still voting for war, because they're still voting for mass immigration, because they're totally controlled. And people on the right who claim to be challenging the system, they still get to make millions of dollars. They still get to be on social media, but because they're a member of the opposition party, they also understand that they're going to have their 2 minutes of hate on occasion from the media and whatnot, because ultimately they face no level of persecution that has real teeth.
I don't know if being mad at an entire political party whose motivation right now seems to be taking away rights from most of the population, I don't think that's akin to 1984 in the way you think it is, John. People being mad at Republicans for wanting to take away rights from women and LGBT people and people of color, etc., etc. It's not us just arbitrarily being mad for no reason because human beings are incredibly blah 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 blah. It's because you're doing a bad thing, John. Stop doing the bad thing.
Because they're still voting for the same things. They just play the heel character, which they're happy to do. And you'll notice as well with Trump.
Slick 1984 reference there, John. Now explain to me exactly why they did the 2 minutes of hate.
When he announced that he was running, they gave him a hard time for some of the comments that he was making, yeah, but he was still hosting Saturday Night Live. He was still doing interviews on primetime television.
Yeah, because people didn't see him as a threat. It's actually a big problem with, like, liberalism, which, you know, you can watch other channels for, but like, milquetoast liberals not seeing that they are part of the problem when promoting threats to vulnerable people is an issue.
He was still allowed on social media. He was still publicly associating with many of his famous friends. And this is something that now seems completely unimaginable. But it makes sense because if you rewatch that coverage that went on during the 2016 cycle, yeah, Trump was great for ratings, but nobody really took him seriously. And then by the time they realized that they needed to take him seriously, it was too late. And people will hear things like this and they'll roll their eyes at it like, well, you really think that Donald Trump is a threat to the system? Because they want to characterize him as this buffoon, or they'll say, well, what do you mean by system? You know, you sound like a conspiracy theorist. And it's like, okay. To that, I would simply recall the Supreme Court precedents on pornography. You know it when you see it. Like, we can sit here and reduce it to abstraction or a bullet point list, but the bottom line is that there is a way that things go in this country. There is an established consensus, and no matter who holds power, things like mass third world immigration, things like wars for democracy, nation building, offshoring our manufacturing base, flooding our country with drugs, destroying the innocence of children, destroying the economic prospects of the American people, destroying their heritage, all of these things just tend to happen regardless of who is like nominally in control of each branch of government. More importantly, these things are all pillars of our system. They're not accessories to it, which means that these are things that are outside of the parameters of the debate. So you might disagree with these things. You might want these things to change, but ultimately, nobody who has ever seriously wanted...
John, Trump isn't actually helping any of those things when he was in power or now. The problems you have with the economy, with jobs being sent overseas, with constant foreign wars, these are problems that are caused by wealthy people, capitalists, who use the government and their money payments to them as donations in order to lobby the government for their own interests. That's a money issue. John's solution to said issue is just, I don't know, fascism, I guess, because that's better? No, John.
Any of these things to change has ever been allowed to get anywhere near the levers of power that would actually be necessary to do so. These are all features.
Him and Nick Band from Twitch are not friends anymore, right? I think so. I think John Doyle doesn't like Nick. KBS says, Trump and John need to learn this. Stop breaking the law, asshole.
Stop breaking the law, asshole!
Duke Desiree says, ah yes, I also adore quoting the famous socialist George Orwell. I bet every conservative who quotes Orwell can't even quote you his real name. It's interesting, too, because you look at 1984, In 1984, if read at a surface level and you weren't thinking about any of the things it's saying, I guess, could be like, look, they're saying a lot of this grew up out of Marxism and Leninism, so clearly those things are inherently bad. Orwell was very specifically talking about how these movements were used, co-opted, and then transformed into authoritarian, dictatorial, autocratic systems, as he saw happened in real life in the Soviet Union and later China. Like, it's pretty clear in the book that he talks about all of this, but all they do is they see, fucking Marxism, that means it's all bad.
Features of our machine, they're not glitches.
Anything left of fascism is bad because Soviet Union.
And Donald Trump is the only one who so far did, and the only one who so far could actually pose a threat to the system that we have in this country. And if you think I'm like a Trump fanatic or something, which honestly, like, okay, fair, but
You are, John. You were until you lost, and then you tried to push yourself away from him because it made you look like a dork. You already do, but it was worse.
You at least have to hear the reasons for that, right? Like, this isn't blind fanaticism. At least give me that much, because there's no incentive to grift for Trump anymore. Like, even ignoring that I've supported this man for the last 7 years, all of the grifters have moved on to supporting people like Ron DeSantis, who I like because he's a safer option, in their opinion. Or these are people who were against Trump in 2016. They capitalized on the momentum to benefit themselves. Now they're abandoning Trump and just following the tide as decided by their neocon overlords, which is what grifters do. And so we will discuss this at length as we continue. The real money and the real attention right now is in selling people a new idea, a new way forward, a fresh candidate. Well, let's try voting for this guy. This time that'll work. And I'm not doing that. I've supported Trump for 7 years. I've criticized him thoroughly when I thought he needed to do better, which was often, frankly, which the grifters got mad at me for doing back then because they're grifters. And I will continue to support Trump. And I have many well thought out reasons for doing this. So it's your
Kind of seems like a bad political strategy to hang your hat on a man who's like almost 80. And I understand Biden's old too, but who the fuck cares? Biden could like fall over tomorrow and I wouldn't care. My political like ideology and strategy for how I hope we move forward in the future is not predicated on an individual in their 70s. Not a great long-term strategy is all I'm saying.
Prerogative to write me off as a grifter or as a fanatic, but you just be dishonest for doing so. And here's something I think we all really need to remember. We are people who follow politics very closely. And because of that, I think it's easy to get complacent in the cycle of things. Like, I remember having a Romney Ryan desktop background back in 2012. Granted, that was before I knew what was going on. I was 12. But still, I was excited about the sport of politics, so to speak. You know, and every candidate is always going to have a certain level of
Everyone who treats politics like a sport is dog shit. You can't change my mind.
excitement and energy behind
If you, in your head, think of politics as a sport, then you don't have enough on the line that you should be making decisions for anyone.
them. It's fun, it's competitive.
If you've never thought, oh, will the results of this election get me killed or fundamentally make sure that I don't have human rights, then, like, I don't know, maybe consider that a lot of people do have to think about that, you know?
It's merchandised, but you step back out of it and you kind of realize that there are examples of this that are truly
Yeah, my dad was one of those people. He's a big piece of shit.
exceptional. And the same goes with the supposed opposition to these candidates. Like, yeah, they called Reagan a fascist. Yeah, they compared Bush to Hitler. But notice how these people all still get together and speak kindly of each other, because a lot of that opposition is nothing more than
I don't believe Bill Clinton ever specifically compared George W. Bush to Hitler. Like, people who are activists at protests who are going to tend to be more left-leaning do not necessarily have the same ideology or motivations as someone like a Bill Clinton. Don't think that's hard to understand, John.
political theater or aggrandizing or distracting the respective bases. But again, if you step back out of that cycle, you realize that there are examples of this that are truly exceptional. Yeah, the tactics may be more or less the same, but the level of viciousness and relentlessness against these people and the complete syndication of these attacks, it's actually unique only to Donald Trump. That's just a fact. You know, I even remember going to George Bush rallies at the Pontiac Silverdome back in 2004. I remember going to Trump rallies in 2016. But but these things are very different. The atmosphere, and more importantly,
Nice occult comics. I'm very happy for you.
what they represent are very different. And so to understand Trump, and more importantly, the dynamics against Trump, because anybody with average intelligence at this point, and at least an honest bone or two in their body, will understand how uniquely intense these attacks are against Trump. And so at that point, there seem to be two interpretations. Either A, Trump is just a terrible candidate, which is why they're attacking him so much, and clearly we should move on to somebody else. Or B, there actually is something about Trump that these people are very threatened by, and we should figure out what that thing is so we can protect it and really lean into it, because the system is very good at defending itself from outside threats. And as much as it maybe wastes resources on promoting stupid things, it doesn't play games when it comes to defending itself. If you are perceived to be a threat, you will be seriously attacked. And so we have to view Donald Trump as more than just an interesting Republican candidate, more than just a popular president, but rather something that actually transcends that. Someone who is quite literally a once-in-a-lifetime political figure, not just another candidate.
I could agree with that. Not in the way John is saying, but Trump is definitely unique in his ability to pull people on the right together towards just the worst ideas. So I don't disagree.
That would be an inaccurate label. And maybe you disagree. Maybe you think I'm silly for saying that. I'm a fanatic. But irrespective of that, the political establishment in this country actually seems to agree with me, because they are treating him exactly with the contempt and persecution that we would expect someone with the profile that I assigned to Trump to be treated. And this isn't even speculative. Like, it goes beyond assumptions. We can actually prove this. They are legitimately threatened by Donald Trump. And like we said,
Yeah, he's a far-right populist leader that basically got all of the crazies and people amenable to authoritarian fascist belief systems. He used their anger and hate of the other in order to basically bring the level of discourse on race and LGBT people and just everything backward like 50 years. It's a bad thing, John. Devil Summoner Marie, thanks for 20 months, says E. I like E.
people forget. People forget this because they're spoiled.
If John got his wish, how long do I think till the fascists turned on him? I actually think John would survive a while in the weird fascist thing. I think he'd be the slimy guy who's kind of in the background a lot until eventually it all blows up in his face. I don't know, though.
They take this new momentum for granted because they're so caught up in the cycle of politics that they forget how bad it used to be for us. Like, do you remember who our options were in 2016? What did Marco Rubio, rising star Marco Rubio, talk about in his 2016 campaign announcement? He talked about how the greatest thing about America is that it allows immigrants from all over the world to come here and work hard to create a better life for themselves. How we have the American dream for everybody. He talked about how our military was weak, which is bad because it won't be able to protect our allies. So in other words, America's great because it's an economic zone for the rest of the world, and it's great because it's a Kevlar vest for the rest of the world. And we have to keep it that way. So vote for me. And people literally thought that Donald Trump was like a Clinton plant to stop Marco Rubio, the real threat to the establishment. This was an actual thought back then. Or what about Jeb Bush? He was the front runner before Trump. What did he talk about in his campaign announcement? He talked about limited government, cutting spending. Okay, I mean, I guess that sounds pretty good. He talked about our military needing to be strong so that we can defend our allies. Oh, okay, I guess that sounds good. And then he literally spoke Spanish and said that we need to be more loving to our neighbors in Mexico. Right. What did Trump talk about? No, Mexico isn't sending their best folks. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some I assume are good people. He's talking about how countries are robbing us of our wealth, of our young men and women. They're laughing at us. Nobody's proud to be an American anymore. We've become a dumping.
Yeah, this is literally just populist fascist rhetoric. Like, and I know, I feel like there's gotta still be, even though we're in 2022, so I know there are people out there who, when you say that, still like roll their eyes because they've never actually like heard a fascist speech translated into English. Like, guys, when Hitler did speeches, he didn't go out on the first day and say all these things about people he wanted to kill. It started with shit like this. This is how fascism starts, is being like, no, other countries are the reason for all of our problems. Immigrants are a reason for your problem. There's an other group. You're all doing great. People are taking things from you. You know what I mean? Like, it's literal fascist rhetoric, John. That's the problem with it.
Ground for everybody else's problems. They're taking advantage of us. We've poured trillions of dollars into wars for other countries. We've
Lily Love Stuff with 27 months as our third sub-baby is here. This sub-baby's name is going to be Charles Chapstick. Charlie Chapstick.
Received no benefits for doing so. We're sending all of our jobs to other countries.
You should watch Don't Be a Sucker. I've seen it. We watched it on Public Domania before. The anti-fascism film from like the 1950s.
And most importantly, we will make America great again. That is the distinction. Everybody else wants to keep you entranced by this false George W. Bush style patriotism where everybody just wants to wave the flag and say America's the best. Oh no, but it's in danger, so you have to give me money and power so I can keep it the best for you. And Trump goes, no, actually, America's the laughing stock of the world because of this poor excuse for a leadership class that we have. And so we're going to go ahead and make America great again. And that is...
Lily Love Stuff says, a fitting name seeing how I'm addicted to skincare. It's weird that John and Trump people in general have this idea that the world was laughing at, like, Obama, but not at Trump. No, that's not how things work. Trump is fucking, like, if it weren't for the fact that Trump is a genuine existential danger to democracy in the United States, he'd be fucking hilarious to watch. Genuinely. The guy is a weird fucking guy. The guy gets laughed at. He literally got laughed at the UN.
Something that actually resonated with people because, yeah, maybe they generally agree with the messaging from everybody else, but before Donald Trump descended from the golden escalator, the American people literally did not even know that they had those grievances as options. Nobody ever spoke about them. They were settled. They were beyond the scope of debate. The experts said so. And which message is it that gets people off the couch to vote for the first time, or again for the first time in decades? We know the answer to that question, and no amount of astroturfing from neocon publications and outlets can change that reality. So as much as we hear now about better leaders and better governors, the bottom line is that before Donald Trump, the state of right-wing politics in this country was people like Jeb Bush. Before Donald Trump, the state of right-wing politics in Florida was people like Jeb Bush, but people like to forget that. And I'm not throwing shade here. I reiterate, I like DeSantis. I'm really happy with a lot of what's happening in Florida. But if you're talking about true leadership, passing bills at the state level where you have significant
St. Henry, thanks for 20 months.
majorities in both chambers of state Congress is not a serious comparison to single-handedly shattering what was for decades a virtual and unquestionable consensus in right-wing American politics. Real. So you've got the direct persecution of Trump and his movement, but that's not enough, right? You have to weaken the movement from within. So what do? You exploit the biggest weakness that the right has, which we all know is weakness. It's cowardice. They manufacture all of this baggage that Trump has, and they never shut up about it. Oh, Russia, Ukraine, Access Hollywood, Diet Coke, literally who cares? This
Lily Love Stuff says, 2020 was the first time my mother ever voted, and it was for Trump, and yes, that horrifies me too. Ugh.
isn't even baggage. It's totally manufactured.
I'm good, Bill. How you doing?
And it's designed to make you go, oh, well, maybe we should support someone less problematic, well, someone more electable. And they're doing this because they intend on it working. Because if there's one
Also, a lot of people don't want the president to be a rapist,
thing that conservatives
believe it or not.
love, it's throwing their best people under the bus once the establishment puts a little bit of pressure on them, which, like we mentioned earlier, is done in the first place precisely because they know that these people are actually threatening to their...
Hey, yeah, by the way, tomorrow's voting day. Go vote. Every single one of you who legally can vote in the United States, if you haven't already through mail-in or early voting, go vote tomorrow. Go do it. If anyone tries to intimidate you, call the proper people. Every state has different authorities you can call for that kind of thing. Xenon Exemer, thanks for 25 months.
Power structure. So they're trying to sow discord. They're trying to sow doubt within the right now. And look, I understand the criticisms. I do. I just don't think they're correct. We'll get more into that. But in terms of why would you rally behind somebody so divisive, somebody who everybody hates, even ignoring the fact that all of that is purposefully manufactured precisely to get you to want to abandon Trump, I don't see another shot. They are going to do this to anybody who threatens them. And Trump is the only guy with the money, the ego, the charisma, and the name recognition to get the job done. He's totally independent of their power. Otherwise, why would they persecute him? Why would they want to undermine Trump so badly?
Because he's a bad guy. It's not hard to understand.
Okay, even...
Why would they want to treat him badly? He's so nice to everyone else, and he's so good for everyone. No, he's not. That's the weird thing. Trump literally makes, like, everyone's life worse, John. It's not hard to understand.
Even if that's true, why should we care about a guy who's not even president and who didn't even accomplish a lot of what he set out to do while he was president? We have to read the writing on the walls. But to understand why they want Trump gone so badly, we first have to understand why he was elected in the first place. Because when you reach a certain stage of political turmoil, politics becomes less about issues per se and more about who's going to protect me from the enemy. And right now, Trump is the only one who has the potential to do that. He has his own money. His ego is too big to quit, frankly. His charisma captures every room that he walks into, and everybody knows who he is.
He's also almost 80 years old, John.
He is too big to fail. They can't stop him. Everybody else, when all is said and done, ultimately can be controlled, even if they truly are a force of opposition. But there does exist a point where somebody has too much money and influence to be controlled. That's why, in addition to persecuting him directly...
This video is not old. This came out 6 hours ago. First name bunch of numbers says it's because a lot of people are racist. Next question.
You've got Republicans.
There's a link for a website that helps you find the most progressive candidates on the ballot in your particular district. Check it out if you need a little cheat sheet for tomorrow.
Establishment people trying to make people doubt Trump by talking about the baggage that their friends have invented and propagated. That's why the state is looking to take action against him. And for the media to stir up everybody...
No, that'd be because of the crimes he has committed, allegedly, John.
And create so much manufactured hysteria that Republicans cave and decide to run somebody less problematic, which is the stupidest thing that we could do for reasons that we'll get into. And that's why ultimately they're trying to make it legally impossible for Trump to run again, because he simply will never quit. And no one would ever buy a fortification the second time around, especially with how disastrous the administration of the supposedly most popular president in history has done, and even more so with everything that's been done in the meantime to prevent that from occurring again. So what can you do to stop him? What do you do in that situation? You've got this guy who will never quit. You've got his base who is too dedicated to really care about all the baggage that you claim he has, aside from a few cowardly examples. So how do you stop?
Cowardly examples, like admitting to assaulting women on camera. Yikes.
That momentum.
Yeah, the whole Biden most popular president in history thing, I have never heard anyone say that who isn't a Republican. It's literally them being aghast that people hate Trump so much that they voted for Joe Biden in such big numbers. John, and by the way, I don't think John is stupid enough to believe that rhetoric. I think a lot of what John does is strategic rhetoric in order to convince his dumbass right-wing I-word young Republican audience to, like, go along with the things he wants. It's more about what he can convince people of, less than what he actually believes.
If you're working in the political establishment, you don't stop it. You try to redirect it. You need a pressure release valve. You need Ron DeSantis. Again, I like DeSantis. I don't think he's necessarily acting maliciously, but all of a sudden in the last year or so, you've seen a lot of this DeSantis versus Trump talk.
Yeah, because DeSantis is probably going to try and run for president, and so is Trump. Starlight Did Nothing Wrong says, "This cruel, dumb little man-child annoys me to no end. I absolutely could not tolerate this without your commentary, Hannah." I'm barely tolerating it now.
Emerging from the same outlets and publications that were never Trump in 2016. My dad actually gave me credit for this on the phone recently, calling out the DeSantis stuff over a year ago, which I appreciated, because I just started to notice all of these outlets all of a sudden were inventing this showdown between Trump and DeSantis. And I'm like, oh, they're going to try it, aren't they? Because here's the bottom line. The way that these people cheered against Trump during the debates in 2016, all of the lobbyists and staffers and donors and special interests, did they actually become sold on Trump? No, they're still vipers, and they're just biding their time, lurking in the shadows. Remember, it was almost Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, Scott Walker, etc. People were like excited about this. These are all good politicians. But I don't think any person truly believes that all we need to get our country and ourselves out of this situation is a handful of good politicians. And herein lies the problem. All of these people are whispering in DeSantis' ear because they want him to run against Trump in 24, because they want a return to politics as usual. And whether or not DeSantis likes it, in order for him to actually get the resources to try to take on Trump, he's going to have to get into bed with the literal worst people in the world who are just foaming at the mouth, begging him to do it because they want to return to a pre-Trump GOP. And they see that opportunity in Ron DeSantis. They want Trumpism without Trump, which, as we'll discuss, is impossible. But that's the point.
John, if you really believe that, then Trumpism is inevitably dead. It's already dead. Bury it, because Trump, again, is almost 80. If your entire political movement is positioned atop of a single charismatic individual, and yes, I'm calling Trump charismatic, I would call Trump charismatic in the sense that he has a negative charisma score, but he somehow rolls high every time, for a specific group of people. You and I listen to Trump and think he's a dumbass, but to dumbasses out there, he's like the dumbass whisperer. Anti-Pritzel says, you say that, John, but then you have to remember that DeSantis likely has ties to cartels. Either way, focusing your entire political movement around a single individual is just defeatist. It is not going to work.
And you can see this with Joe Biden's speech, which was a declaration of war against Trump supporters specifically, against the idea of making America great again specifically.
Do I think they'd try to elect Trump Jr. or any of his other sons after he dies? Yes. Trump Jr. is almost certainly going to try. Don't know about anyone else. Overthought says, DeSantis is just Trump that knows to not say the quieter part out loud. Way more dangerous. I think they're dangerous for different reasons, but yes, DeSantis would be more effective in pushing awful, awful, awful policies.
Where the GOP and DeSantis try to respond to it as a political attack on half the country. People who disagree with them politically. That's not what Biden said, though. He said specifically Trump supporters. But the GOP wants to frame it like it was about them because they have to. They have to play the victim, right? Like, that's the political theater. Pretending like Biden and the left are actually threatened by establishment GOP leadership. So they're trying to make noise. They're trying to get your attention. Oh, ow, ow, I'm absorbing the blow. This was about me. Here's this strategy for fighting back, which ultimately serves the same class of people that ordered this speech in the first.
Do I think Starship Troopers is John's favorite film? He probably likes the first part of American History X, if I had to guess.
Place. This is controlled opposition, by the way. We know that. This is also exactly what I predicted was going to happen 2 years ago when I made my what.
I feel like he's probably also the kind of person that watches Fight Club and loves it for all the wrong reasons.
Happens if Trump loses video, that's maybe beside the point, but it's unfolding now. I mean, they're not trying to represent you, they're trying to contain you. And again, this is a movement, okay? We're reasonable, we understand that passing the torch is inevitable. Nobody's saying that Trump is going to be the guy forever, but we have.
Let's be honest, as soon as the next fascist rises, John will fall in line. Of course he will. That's the whole point.
Have to make sure that when we're passing the torch, we are doing it at the right time, giving it to the right person.
No, if he was the governor, he'd just resign if he won the presidency. People who are governors run for president. That's common, historically.
For the right reasons. But for the time being, it is still Trump's torch and it is still Trump's movement. And there's been a lot of talk about this in the last few months. And so I just want to make it perfectly clear, it is still Donald Trump. And to all the DeSantis fans, to the people living in Florida, I'm glad that you have a governor who wants to do his job properly. I love a lot of what he's done in Florida. He's doing a fine job, but we all want what's best. And so this is a friendly heads up that you're probably not going to like a lot of what we get into with DeSantis. And that's fine, but we have to get into it nonetheless because it's true. And I'm afraid that what we're going to see after the midterms, after the GOP establishment is done fundraising off Trump's name, I'm afraid what we're going to see is an official shift away from Trump and attempt to screw him out of 2024 in order to prop up somebody more electable.
If we can genuinely get some kind of, like, mad infighting between Trump people and DeSantis people, that would be really good.
As if
I don't necessarily think John's borderline conspiracy theory here is true, but I do think it would be good if they got into it and spent some energy fucking with each other.
Electable means anything other than who will get the most votes and win the election, who will have the base most excited, who will inspire people to vote again for the first time in decades after having given up on our entire political system. Donald Trump is obviously that man. And we have a lot of
He didn't win the last election, John.
evidence for this to get into, but anyways, I may end up hurting some feelings. Bear with me, okay? Please watch all the way through because we're going to touch on a lot of things. Watch it in parts if you have to. 2 rules. You have to watch all the...
I just find it hard to see anything but diminishing returns for Trump going forward in terms of national elections. Certainly he's popular among a lot of the right. Most of the right, he's very popular. But when we're talking general public, I think we've reached max saturation on people who like Trump. At this point, you either like Trump or you hate Trump, or you just roll your eyes at Trump and don't pay enough attention to know he's actually dangerous. But, like, It's like McDonald's. You might not like McDonald's, but everyone knows about McDonald's. You don't really need ads for McDonald's because everyone already knows about it, you know? How does Trump pick up more support after he already lost the last election? Fenekagami says, a fine job. Meanwhile, DeSantis is tanking Florida's housing market and economy.
The way through, and you can't get mad at me until the end, because we're going to address...
We're only 19 minutes into this, by the way. This is definitely going to be a multi-parter.
Elephants in the room, okay? This will be something of an autopsy on the first Trump administration, but it's also going to go over a lot of the frankly ridiculous anti-Trump arguments that we keep hearing from people on our side, how he's supposedly too divisive, how he supposedly didn't get anything done, how he promoted the jab, things like that. We'll address the Trump versus DeSantis, who's a better leader, who's a better governor, who would get things done, the difference between the two, why this persecution is happening, who stands to benefit from it, the entire web of relationships between the federal government, the FBI, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, the deep state, Ron DeSantis.
I don't think John himself is anti-vax, but I think he also recognizes it as a very popular position to at least, you know, basically virtue signal. I would call it vice signaling to those people in the Republican base. It's basically a necessary right-wing political opinion to at least be okay with anti-vaxxers.
The GOP establishment, among some other things, why Trump is exceptional, the Biden speech declaring war on Trump supporters, the curious response from the GOP and Ron DeSantis, what good red state governing looks like, the future of the right wing, and by extension, the future of our country. And we will be going over all of it. So please do stay tuned.
Oh my God, we're just now into the
Ladies
intro.
and gentlemen, welcome to Heck Off Commie. Look, we've got to stop doing this. I mean, you and I, this separation, it just isn't good for either of us, spending this much time apart from each other. Nobody wins when we do that, and we like to win. That much I will tell you. But in all seriousness, you want like an explanation? You want the inside baseball? Because I know I've been gone for a while. I know that I've been missed. So you want me to kind of update you as to what's been going on behind the scenes, or what's going on?
My culture has been appropriated.
All right, well, hey, that's fine by me, but it's actually quite fitting that after so much time off, we discuss these things at length, because a lot has happened in these last few months, and all the things that we're going to get into here, namely the feds, the establishment, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, all of these things can be used to accurately assess and analyze our current political dynamic in terms of how they relate to each other and what they represent. And that's very important, actually. What do all of these things, names, institutions, whatever, what do they actually represent in relation to the American people at the current time? So we'll actually get a pretty good update on our political dynamic from all this, and we're going to jump around because we got a lot to go through. Of course, I have to urge you, stay tuned, watch all the way through, watch it in parts if you have to, but just be sure to hear me out all the way through.
Twitch is getting more aggressive with ads, sadly. True. You could always subscribe to this fine channel, and no longer will ads hamper your enjoyment of my fine, bespoke content. He probably thinks Mr. House and the Brotherhood are good guys. He strikes me as the Caesar's Legion type, but okay. Lots of calling people degenerates. El Minato says, do you think John goes Caesar or LARP's Yes Man in his fascist utopia? Probably Caesar or Yes Man, if he wants to be the dictator.
Because we've got a lot to go over, and we're very excited about it. We're also very excited about the upcoming debate I'll be doing at the University of Tennessee.
Oh my God. Who's letting John Doyle on a college campus?
In Knoxville on November 14th. So if you're in the area, you'd like to attend, I'll put a link with all that information in the description. But you know what else we're excited about? Shameless product placement. Hey, you! If you go to the local clothing store where the soy boys shop, you might notice that the price of boxers has gone through the roof.
You're subbed and still got a thing saying commercial break in progress? Are they giving... Is that a glitch, or are they giving people with subs ads now?
And just to make matters worse, the material is cheap. These brands, they're run by people who hate you, but you're not a soy boy, you're a doy boy. That's why you need Undertag, the only brand that has literally been backed They tell you very and that political is saying this. We mentioned earlier, undertack.com offer code. It's been the longest intro. Very epic. We continue. So like we mentioned earlier in the intro, which may have even been the longest intro in the history of Hawk. I mean, many people are saying
they give ads. They give everyone ads now. That's weird. Maybe just less if you're subbed. I don't know.
That's what I'm hearing. I don't know. But all of this persecution against Trump is because the political establishment on both sides, even though it's technically like all the same thing, man, whatever, that political establishment sees a legitimate threat in the momentum created by Donald Trump. And so they've never stopped the persecution. And this is even carried over into his life outside of the White House in the last 2 years or so, which is, of course, unprecedented for a former president. And they've even escalated the severity of this persecution in terms of the actual long-term consequences of it, because
he's being persecuted for breaking the law. They keep investigating him for crimes.
Media slander, that's one thing. Federal prosecution, that's another, because they're trying to prevent...
Wouldn't it be nice if after tomorrow's election, like the next day or sometime in the week, Trump actually... And I don't think this is going to happen. I'm a pretty pessimistic person when it comes to this kind of stuff. I think Trump will get away with everything he's ever done because he's rich, and I don't think there's justice in this country. Bit of a doomer. Anyway, wouldn't it be nice, though, if he got indicted?
Prevent him from running again in 2024. That's the investigations, that's the committees, that's the lawsuit in New York with the Attorney General. That's all of that. And you can tell yourself it's because they really just...
Shit. The Powerball's at $2 billion today, and I forgot to buy a ticket. Damn, I was definitely going to win that.
Give a damn about having high-quality statesmen, but literally any metric by which you would choose to replicate that would say that you're just absolutely wrong. It's because it's Trump. So... Of course, they're trying to get Trump to balk. They're trying to turn up the heat to where he's just like, you know what? I've had enough of this. I'm just going to go back to living my luxurious lifestyle without having to deal with the nonsense that you people literally never stop. But because Trump is Trump, his ego is incapable of doing that. He'll just never stop. And he writes...
That's a bad quality to have in a political leader, John. Persistence is one thing. Delusions that you can never lose is a bad thing.
Feels as though he's been mistreated throughout his entire, political adventure.
We're going to have an uptick in violence regardless of how the election goes? Probably.
And he's not going to stop until he achieves something approximating a personal sense of justice. And his supporters see that too. And for that reason, they also literally will never stop. They will not balk. They will not give up on Trump so long as Trump does not give up on them. And the only people who have left the Trump train are the usual suspects. These are your neocons, your neo-never-Trumpers, people who never liked Trump in the first place, but for the sake of their careers, they kept their mouths shut. They waited for the opportunity to try to return things to the status quo. And they're being very sneaky with how they're going about doing this. Like you'll notice with the FBI raid in particular, they obviously had to cover it because it was so unprecedented and it was so extreme. But you'll notice that the popular talking point in terms of why we should be opposed to it was, well, if they can go after Trump like this, well, then they're going to go after you like this.
Do you have classified documents in your house?
Listen very closely to what that means and to what that implies. If Trump now, then you next. This is not actually the case. They just want to go after you by continuing to ruin and loot your country. If you're an average GOP voter, you probably don't need to worry too soon about the FBI attacking you. So you're not supporting Trump here because, well, this could happen to any of us, but rather because it's happening specifically.
John, you're misunderstanding. The GOP base are fucking idiots, so all of the rhetoric is tuned to the lowest common denominator for idiots. You should know this. It's a lot of your audience.
To him and only to him, because he's the only actual threat to the established order in this country, and they want to prevent him from running again in 2024 by any means necessary.
This genuinely feels kind of delusional. John Doyle, I feel a little bit bad for at this point. John, even if you still like Trump as a weird, fashy, commentator as you do, whatever, but this much faith in one man is so stupid, it is going to cause you a lot of issues when he inevitably dies. He's an old guy. He's not in the best shape, okay? He's going to die. This is very weird that you're focusing so much on him. It's like you're trying to live the golden days, 2016, right after the election, when, all the right-wing MAGA chuds were on such a high, you know? It's not gonna happen, at least not the same way, John. Trump might win in 2024 if he runs, genuinely. I'm under no delusions that we're safe from things. Tomorrow's an election I'm very worried about with the midterms. Please go vote. But John just seems to be wanting to go back to the good old days, which is a very right-wing thing to want to do. Although it is funny that because he's only in his early 20s, the good old days for John are like 4 years ago. Devil Summoner Marie says, it's just that the Brotherhood is legit an isolationist gun cult that hates gays and minorities, mutants, and the entire point of them is they're supposed to seem cool until you spend 5 minutes thinking about their ideologies. In Fallout 1, they send your character on a suicide mission because they want to get rid of you, and in 2, they ignore the threat of the Enclave until their wanderer starts breaking down their encampments. They were probably thinking of joining up with the Enclave. John wasn't even old enough to vote in 2016? I know he wasn't. That's what makes it funny.
Literally. And that's the problem with the way that they framed this. It frames the issue in a very traditional pre-Trump dressing, which is essentially that the problem here is government overreach and going after someone who you disagree with politically. And we need to stand against this now, because if we don't, well, then pretty soon all of our private resorts are going to be raided by the nanny state. If they get Trump now, well, pretty soon they'll be going after Paul Ryan. And you'll notice this with a lot of what we're going to be talking about. It's all specifically curated to try to put you back in the cage, back in the box of pre-Trump right-wing politics. And some people will say, oh, well, what about the raiding of houses of the political opposition under the guide of combating, you know,
I am
extremism
getting
and
so many right-wing ads. There's a Tudor Dixon ad. God. Stop it. Not gonna vote for Tudor Dixon.
terrorism, yeah, huge problem, but they're already doing that. And it's not just their political opposition. That's too vague. That includes far too many people who we don't like. It's specifically Trump's biggest supporters who get locked up as political prisoners, and then also people who dare advocate against the crown jewel of American liberty.
I've been getting right-wing Georgia texts. What's that guy's name? The football player that paid for abortions. I keep forgetting his name for some reason. Herschel Walker. I've been getting texts to vote for Herschel Walker. I live in Michigan.
Which is the ritual sacrifice of the unborn. So they're trying to demoralize us while aggrandizing their own base. Midterms, it is what it is. So the point of this is just to say that the biggest asset that we currently have as American patriots is Donald J. Trump. Fact. And that's why they're going after him. It's not exactly like this slippery slope scenario where they want to do that to him to set precedent for when they do it to you. It's more like they're just going to do it to you anyways. And the coalition that he has is the only legitimate impediment to that happening. Like, who actually believes at this point that precedent even matters? Like, oh, the pendulum's going to swing back. Who even believes that? Like, do you think that these people care about appearing impartial? The left doesn't care about any kind of precedent that their persecution is going to set because they don't even expect to ever be out of power in any meaningful way ever again. Like, even on the off chance that the GOP manages to assemble enough guys with a spine.
See you, Evil Dead guy. Understand. John's hard to get through. Hope you have a good night.
The left owns the FBI. They own the media. The
left owns the FBI. Yes, classically the FBI is thought of as a very left-leaning branch of the government.
To the deep state, no matter how the election goes. That's why the precedent doesn't matter. Like, the election doesn't touch the critical parts of the machine unless you get someone in there who has the blueprints and wants to just destroy the whole thing. That's why they have to do anything necessary to stop Trump, because you don't just build a political machine of this magnitude and then, like, oh, here you go, just hand it over to the other side because 51% of the masses said so. That's why the executive branch, it might change its figurehead, but the deep state remains until you get someone in there who knows how
Oh my God, the deep state does not exist.
Burn it to the ground. But we've seen how strong their defense is against that, of course. So the real problem here, and this is the big lesson that we all should have learned throughout the Trump years, it's not necessarily the existence or the size of the state, of power broadly speaking, but rather who's in charge of it. People who haven't caught up to this, they're not quite going to make it. The problem is that it happened to Trump specifically, precisely because they want to prevent him from running in 2024, because the system is completely corrupt, it's totally compromised, and he's the only one who actually has the potential to change that. If on January 22nd, 2017, the FBI were raiding properties owned by the Clintons, by the Podestas, the Obamas, the Epsteins, et cetera, I would endorse that. That wouldn't be government overreach. That would just be epic. Like, we all wanted that to happen.
So John is literally just saying, he says the left doesn't care about precedent, but I disagree when this happens to Trump, but also if it happens to people I deem politically my enemies, then that's awesome. Do we see the issue with your own hypocrisy, John, you fascist little piece of shit? You're such a goddamn weasel. Hydrate.
still needs to happen. And we all know why. But I hope that I'm articulating that point sufficiently, that the problem isn't necessarily this, extreme government overreach and, if we don't stop now, well, then it's going to happen to all of us. It's that they would never do anything like that to anybody who they don't perceive to be a very real and a very serious threat to their establishment.
Overthought does a hats off. What would you like me to wear?
Which, again, is totally hostile to the
Auntie Pretzel says, Johnny boy, you're part of the problem.
American people.
The Jadora. I hate the Jadora. Why do you people make me wear the Jadora? Here, can I do Chudora over flower? Yeah, that looks great. Someone better get me a wizard hat or something when that time's out.
And so if you frame it otherwise, it suggests that the system is fundamentally good, but it's become a bit overzealous. It just needs to, wrangle it back a bit, just a little bit of tweaking. This, of course, isn't the case. It's because the system is rotten. It's toxic at its core, and it needs to be purged, so to speak. And that's
whoops, mask slipped off there for a second.
The system is rotten. It's toxic at its core, and it needs to be purged, so to speak.
Oh.
And that's another thing that we'll talk about extensively, the problem of people who claim they're on our side, but they still have this fundamental faith in the system, this fundamental faith in the establishment.
Louis Love Stuff says the deep state is the secret submarine state located at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. You would be amazed at how far left the anglerfish human hybrids are. They live in a matriarchal, highly misandrist society.
Well, it's just a matter of getting a good politician into office, a respectable one, and then we can go back to politics as usual. No, we need someone who's talking about just burning the whole thing down. And only Donald Trump is talking about doing that. Only Donald Trump is talking about purging the bureaucracy. And only Donald Trump is attracting the people who would be able to do that, having openly learned his lesson from the previous administration. These other characters, they aren't attracting that stock of people. They're attracting, conversely, the same neocon, DC scum. That's who's orbiting them. And you'll notice, too, that this is always the case with the neo-never-Trumpers. They still fundamentally have faith in the system. They
Neo-never-Trumpers, wow.
Actually view language about burning the whole thing down to be unsophisticated. They view it to be low class, it's uneducated. They'll actually wince at it because, they learned better when they got their master's in public policy degree from George Washington University. And that does explain it all. They've just got this bizarre faith in the system because it makes them feel smarter than the people who just want to burn the whole thing down. So,
John, have you considered that perhaps we've learned from history that changing systems is often an easier and safer process than collapsing an entire system and creating a power vacuum to build something new? Robespierre has some things to say about that, or at least he would if he still had a head.
Yeah, but what if they prosecute Trump? At this point, it's what's the difference, DC jury, ooh, very scary. Maybe there's a protest. Even then, only 100 people are going to show up. We're not very good at that. They would still probably deploy the National Guard, use it as a photo op to further the political persecution of specifically Trump supporters, and they'd call it a sequel to January 6th. But the point is that the political establishment knows exactly what it's doing. The GOP needs Donald Trump right now because the fact of the matter is that only Donald Trump's name can energize the base in the way that they want for midterms. But after the midterms are over, pay very close attention to the way that the GOP is treating Donald Trump. Pay very close attention to the actions of Ron DeSantis after he wins re-election in Florida. Pay very close attention to the way that the GOP starts to act towards Ron DeSantis. Right now,
I do actually think that will be interesting considering the showdown that might be coming up in the Republican primaries. If it is Trump v. DeSantis, that is going to be interesting to see how that plays out and which side establishment Republicans take, because I'm sure a lot do genuinely view Trump as toxic to their brand. They recognize that he lost in 2020 for pretty obvious reasons, even though Biden wasn't a good candidate. So who's to say he'd win if he ran in 2024? Really interesting. Devil Summoner Marie says, biology lesson, anglerfish males are significantly smaller than anglerfish females. They bite onto females and their bodies meld into the female and atrophy until they're just testicles. So it would make sense for anglerfish humans to be misandrous. Wow. Fenekigami says, it's amazing how fascists worship people who they defend as either monsters or incompetent morons.
They're happy to use the name and the momentum of Donald Trump to fundraise, but after the midterms are over, I think you're going to start to see their true colors be revealed. And the other side of the political establishment is, of course, trying to prevent him from being the nominee as well. So they're going to run the same play of going all the way. So, of course, the spineless conservatives agree on the general sentiment, but not the extremes. Obviously, Trump shouldn't run in 2024, but going to prison? That seems a little extreme. Here's the thing that the cowards don't understand. Literally nobody cares. There's a certain conversation that one has to have with themselves before voting for Donald Trump, before accepting the Don into one's heart, which is basically this. I don't care about the Access Hollywood tape. I don't care about the tweets. I don't care about the lack of filter. I actually like them. They're coming for my children. They're erasing my history. They're taking my money. I need somebody who's going to go after these people. Because like we said, at this stage,
Just fascist fucking rhetoric.
of political decline and turmoil, it's not as much about issues. It's about who is going to protect you from the enemy. And the left, through Biden's speech, has declared Trump supporters, normal Americans, to be the enemy. So the people who
John, you are anything but a normal American, I assure you.
would be offended by this, the cowards, are outweighed by the people who are inspired by this. This meaning the legitimate threat to the political establishment that they know has failed them, that has raped them, sold them out, humiliated them, and Trump knows that.
Yikes on the R word.
And he wants revenge. He's been punished. They raided his son's bedroom. They've done nothing but try to humiliate him for the last 7 years. Most of his friends have turned on him. They're trying to send his other son to prison for nothing, literally nothing. They're doing the same thing to him.
Literally nothing. Guessing the word literally doesn't mean a whole lot in that sentence.
If you think he's not going to try to go in there and burn this whole thing down or die trying, you are mistaken. You need to stop reading op-eds from your favorite pundits. Start reading about the great political power struggles of history. Start reading about the great declines of empires. We're not above our cycle of history because there has never been a...
No shit, John, but please, John. Empires that collapse from democracies into autocracy? Not great. Doesn't usually work out well for most people except for the ruling class. I wouldn't recommend it. Not a good idea, John.
A political figure as popular as Trump. I can defend that statement. In America, I mean, in the last 100 years or so, because it's not just about states won. I mean, people are saying they love Trump. They literally love Donald Trump. Where else have you seen this in American history? People still fly Trump flags. They still wear the MAGA hats.
Yeah, it's creepy cultish behavior. Hydrate.
They've got the bumper stickers, not just because they forgot to take them off. They are choosing to keep them on. Whenever have you seen this level of support continued for a candidate who didn't even stay in Oval Office? Please spare me the electoral maps of days past. Riddle me this instead. Who, with the current demographics and institutional monopolization in this country, would actually get more votes than Donald Trump? This is not Nixon or Reagan's America anymore. Find me somebody who can get the crowds that Trump can. There are rising stars. I agree. Very good, very talented people emerging. But for the time being, it is absolutely Trump's movement. That is where the momentum is. That is where the base is. And that is from where the trajectory needs to continue. Anybody who right now is trying to get us to move past Trump is doing at least one of three things. They're acting maliciously.
Donald Trump is 76 years old. He will be dead within a decade, John. Once again, you cannot put an entire political movement on the back of one person who is that old. It will collapse. Which, hey, I think would be a great thing. You know I hate Trump, and hey, shocker, not a fan of fascism. So that's fine, but it's just weird to me watching John, who, while a piece of shit, doesn't seem like a complete idiot. He has a personality disorder or two, certainly, but, like, I don't think he's a blithering idiot as much as I just think his morals are fucked up. I think he lacks empathy and all sorts of other things, but I don't think he's this stupid to not understand the genuine need for other leaders within a political movement when your figurehead is 76 years old.
They're masturbating to their self-perception of a smart political person, which typically is rooted in class insecurity, or they're failing to sufficiently read the room. In other words, if you're off the Trump train, It's because you're either retarded, gay, or evil, or some combination of the three.
Oh, there's a reportable part.
It's because you're...
Do do ba da ba do do do. Oh, there's a link with a timestamp. That's weird.
either retarded, gay, or evil, or some combination of
And
the...
if Trump runs in 2024, he'll be 78. He would be in his 80s by the time he was done with his term.
three. This cannot be refuted. But, like, okay, maybe it's the...
And once again, to be clear, I know that's the case with Biden, too. Biden is also too old, and I don't like that.
persecution he's facing. Maybe it's actually because they're threatened by Donald Trump. But why? What is it about Donald Trump that is so threatening? You know, you keep saying that, John, but what do you actually mean by this? Well, firstly, everything that I've said about him so far and everything that I will say about him here, tell me that I'm wrong. Like, you can dislike Trump, that's fine, that's your prerogative, but I'm not wrong about these things. And just like in my What Happens If Trump Loses video, you will see that as time passes, the points that we're making here will be completely vindicated. And look, I get it. Do I think that Trump is the sole answer to all of our problems, that he's just gonna fix everything? No, I've never claimed that. Do I think he's gonna save the world? No. But at the same time, what's wrong with having political heroes? Like, should we just instead get our hero fix from the Marvel Cinematic Universe like the rest of America?
No. Also, the MCU, I don't know how popular it still is amongst people these days. But, John, you could pick political heroes that aren't dog shit, awful people. That would be great.
Like, the only relevant difference between a political hero and a historical hero is like whether you were alive at the same time or something. It's like Iran said after we killed Soleimani, and people were wondering if they were going to
Why do I get the feeling that one of his historical heroes is Andrew Jackson?
retaliate. Iran's like, how could we when all of their heroes are fictional? Like, are we...
For what it's worth, your grandfather has shit health and never takes care of himself. He's lived to 90 years so far, so Trump living another 10 seems easy to me, but not rooting for him to make it either way. Yeah.
supposed to kill Spider-Man? Are we supposed to kill SpongeBob? And here's the biggest thing. It's not even necessarily just Trump, but the people who would be inspired by him and want to work alongside him in forwarding his agenda. That's the key. And obviously there were some severe personnel errors in the first administration, which now even Trump seems to acknowledge himself. But the point is that...
Does anyone remember Scaramucci? That guy who lasted like a week and did a bunch of coke?
While every president is going to attract bad people who want to exploit them to get closer to the levers of power, only somebody with the messaging and the momentum that Donald Trump has would attract the people who are both good and capable of actually enacting positive change in this country. These people aren't inspired by what the pre-Trump GOP was offering. And Trump truly does inspire people. Like, Trump, firstly, is the most popular Republican ever. That's a fact. And he's lit a fire in this country of world historical proportions. That is also a fact. And he inspires people like no other candidate that we've ever seen in our lifetimes. And people take this for granted. People take...
I'm pretty sure Reagan was way more popular than Trump in terms of, like, the country as a whole. Like, people liked Reagan at the time. There were plenty of people who didn't like Reagan, but, like, Reagan was generally popular in the United States. Trump, while he has a large Republican diehard fan base, at best you can say he's incredibly divisive. There are people who hate Trump, there are people who love Trump. He's not Reagan.
Take for granted that Trump went up against like a dozen politically trained Ivy League lawyers and made them sweat and stutter like idiots. Like, who else can do that? Michael Bloomberg tried. Everyone thought, oh, he and Trump, they're cut from the same cloth. New York billionaires. Elizabeth Warren comes out, chews him up and spits him back out like it was nothing. Go watch Ron DeSantis debate against Andrew Gillum in 2018, or the one he just did about Charlie Crist. It's not even close. And in fact, DeSantis, he maybe even had a bit of a hard time. I don't know. Again, I'm not taking shots at DeSantis, not saying he's bad. I like him. I just have to reaffirm that Trump is just so exceptionally good, and I'm tired of...
I heard about Tate's Conversion.
Watching people be psyoped by establishment neocon media into forgetting that. But it's always that fundamental faith in the establishment. I mean, they look at Trump, who didn't get anything done. Like, sure, okay. And they think that's an error.
What did he get done?
On his part, exclusively. Like, hey, this guy who ran a campaign on restructuring our entire political system faced unprecedented roadblocks and persecution.
Okay, so what do you think he's gonna do if he got in again that would be different from the first time? He has the same powers.
From people in the GOP establishment who claimed to be on his side, but ultimately, and with intention, subverted his administration. What a loser. We'll get more in depth with this as we continue. But these people are able to think that because they can't comprehend how bad things actually are. You just have to vote in the right, respectable, experienced person into office. The only reason voting for somebody who's a part of the establishment makes sense is if you believe the establishment actually has the answers to the problems that are faced by the American people. The opposite of this is actually the case. Whereas our establishment is actually like what imposes upon us easily 90% of the problems that we face as a country. And that's probably even a conservative estimate. The establishment is the disease. That's the enemy. That's the problem. And it's essentially incapable of offering a solution to like itself, right? That's the whole point. It's very good at preserving itself. It's very sophisticated. But there's a certain requisite psychology that's necessary to understand that. You probably know what I'm talking about.
It's so weird that John Doyle is able to point out and recognize that wealthy people basically control the country and the direction of our politics to the detriment of most people who live here. But instead of like, hey, we should do something about that and make it more equitable so people are represented more fairly and we aren't just doing the bidding of billionaires and multimillionaires. Instead, he just goes, nah, let's just be fascist and xenophobic and it's not going to fix the problem, John. They're completely unrelated things.
Because it's probably very frustrating to you as well, because in order to understand this, you really have to have a certain level of like agency. Like it really is agency, you know, this sort of willingness to accept uncomfortable truths. It's willingness to disregard the opinions of others, or to just generally like break through herd consensus. And it's also just like this general thirst for truth, like a general wanting to know.
Because when I think conservative, I think a thirst for truth and knowledge.
Wanting to follow
which books we burning this week, Cletus?
The trail, wanting to go down the rabbit hole or what have you. But I think all of that can best be summarized by an individual's overall agency. And we've talked about this before, but unfortunately, most people just do not have agency. That's just human nature. It is what it is. And so even for
dehumanizing people
who are interested in politics, for a lot of people, it's like a fetish. Like they really derive an almost sexual level of pleasure from just subscribing to the stupidest ideas and worldviews.
Projection? Didn't John say earlier in this that he views it as a sport? Kind of sounds like what he's talking about now, but okay. Ooh, did we get the Charles Chapstick? No. Hold on. This is the sub baby from earlier. Charles Chapstick.
I'm talking about otherwise reasonable people. These are people who might even vote Republican, but it's just like a power LARP to them. It's a game. That's really what it is. It's like, whether it's neocons or libertarians or whoever, you're literally like playing this tabletop RPG with them, and they're like, haha, I'm a wise wizard, and we wizards use deception to control our foes. Your unguided mind can know the truth? Foolish, only my crystal ball can conjure knowledge. It's like, okay.
I don't think John has played a tabletop game based on his interpretation of it in that badly thought out comedy bit.
Okay, so can we talk about the rise in violent crime, or can we talk, aha, I'm Michael Malice, the wise wizard. Don't you know that violent crime on public transportation is caused by government intervention? Ha ha ha, my attack weakens you by 10 HP. I'm trying to think of what I was what it reminds me of. It reminds me of that South Park episode when Mark Zuckerberg is just going around the town.
Isn't this just like the epitome of so much of like John Doyle types? Hey guys, this reminds me of a thing I saw in South Park. Great. Thanks, Trey. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, you're really cultivated a political body of winners with your apathy as politics approach to everything.
Harassing people. That's the same thing. It's like, okay, Cool, we get it. You're like this super serious political junkie. You're not like buying into the whole Trump momentum. Cool. Can we stop LARPing now? Like, can we just be honest with ourselves now? It's the horseshoe theory of practical intelligence once again. You've got the low IQ people, and they wear two hats, the MAGA hat and the tinfoil hat. And then you've got the high IQ people who speak of these things very matter-of-factly because it's not as exciting or romantic to them. It's just like, you know, whatever. And then you've got these people in the middle, these midwits, the 115 IQ people who exist in this false controlled dichotomy between, well, the system is good, actually. It just needs a little bit of tweaking, versus, oh, any system is bad. We should ask the system to delete itself. And then they start making out with each other. You are gay. This system is the problem. We're smart enough to have a good system. We had a better system, and we still have the time and the resources and the stock of people to correct course, though not for much longer. So this conservative movement, it doesn't actually seek to represent you against the system. It's not a legitimate opposition party. It seeks to contain you. It seeks to control artificially the parameters of the debate. That's why anybody who steps out of line gets purged. And anybody with integrity is prevented from achieving a significant level of influence or power. And it's been that way for decades.
Bear in mind, by saying that, he is implying that Trump is a man of great integrity. Yikes.
All until somebody who had achieved that level of influence and power independently of it just decided to try to plug himself into it as a hobby about 7 years ago.
But we can solve those problems in a matter of literally minutes. Thank you. Don't say that, I'll start to cry, and that wouldn't be good for my image. You don't want to see me cry. I'll start to cry. You know, one of the fake news...
But one thing I've noticed is that people want to try to use his popularity as a way to insult normal Americans by saying it's like motivated by this stupid fanatical cult worship. But they absolutely refuse to consider, because they view themselves as their own type of expert class, they absolutely refuse to consider that maybe Trump's popularity can best be explained actually by the fact that he is the first president in most people's lifetimes to so accurately and so precisely reflect their actual interests and attitudes about their country. Like, we talked about this earlier.
John, that's what, like, populist right-wingers do, is they look at people's insecurities and fears, and they stoke the flames of them in order to get political support. We understand how this works.
People did not know that these things were even on the menu. And when they were on the menu with figures like Pat Buchanan, establishment conservative media worked overtime actively to make sure that nobody knew about it. But Trump is too big to fail. I mean, he's a household name. He's got his own money. They couldn't stop him. Like, is it any wonder that the political establishment, which is openly resentful and hostile towards the people over whom it governs, is it any wonder why they want to do away with him so badly? Again, show me one other political figure in the history of this country that has been persecuted to this extent by the establishment.
Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr. JFK was literally shot. His brother was also fucking shot. What do you want me to say, John? First name bunch of... Harvey Milk was fucking killed, too. First name bunch of numbers says, yeah, he's the first one to say the quiet part out loud. Not all of us consider that an achievement.
Cannot do this. Show me one time in this country's history where it was worse off because of the incumbent regime. You can't. Oh, well, the Civil War. Literally not even then. Oh, well, this guy got assassinated. You probably only know about the presidents who were assassinated, and you probably only know about half of them, and you probably don't even know which half of that half actually had it coming. Frankly. Anyways, yeah, so Trump wasn't good enough at defying the deep state. At least he tried. Like, who else would have tried? Seriously. Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush?
There's no such thing as the deep state, John. You dumb motherfucker.
We would still be in Afghanistan. And the proxy war against Russia, that would have happened years earlier. Only Trump can say that he defied the same political system which was empowered by all those who came before him, many of whom we voted for in the first place, which is, of course, why they targeted him then, it's why they do now, and it's why they'll continue to do so indefinitely. There has been no other serious candidate to attempt, let alone succeed, at shattering the political establishment's orthodoxies on free trade and outsourcing, things that have hollowed out the country's manufacturing capacity, things that have destroyed the ability for normal Americans to get a well-paying job without having to go into severe debt. And then Trump comes along in his speech and he asks, when's the last time you saw a Chevrolet in Tokyo? What does that even mean? People like to forget that. People like to forget that every president on Mount Rushmore was a protectionist. People like to forget that every country that's ever built
Mount Rushmore.
serious wealth has done so through protectionism. But that's beside the point, since I get...
Do we need a cleanse? We can do the cleanse right now if you want. We have time. Guys, Alex Chud. I'm just gonna play it. This is gonna... We're gonna do it.
What's up? This is Alex Chud coming at you with another episode. This episode, I want to teach people how to save money by just urinating inside a bottle. How to save money by just urinating inside a bottle.
You have my interest, sir.
I know it sounds this sounds like a gross subject, but hey, you know, I have nothing to talk about today, so.
Why
anyway,
not?
Today, yeah, I want to tell you, my name's Alex Chud. I'm the guy who invented physical mortality rings. These are rings that you put on your small finger string sleeve. You wear them, you don't age anymore. You become physically immortal. For example, I'm already 51. See, I'm still pretty slim, right?
His pants are undone.
I never work out, you know. Don't have a beer belly. In fact, I'm an alcoholic. Every morning I wake up, I have to drink whiskey, you know. But I still look pretty good.
You drink whiskey in the morning?
If you go to my website, livemuchlonger.com, you see lots of testimonials. Most of them give me 4-star, 5 stars. So if you're interested, you want to look like me when you're 51, livemuchlonger.com, livemuchlonger.com. Link is at the bottom of this video. Today is September 24th, okay, 2022. Jerome Powell just raised interest rate another 75 points, right? So there's going to be a housing bubble, man. I mean, no doubt.
We were in a housing bubble. There might be a housing crash.
Today I have nothing to talk about.
Gnome Pickles says, a buddy of mine did a report on this guy back in the long ago when I was in high school. I need to let him know Chew is still doing stuff. Dr. Gamble says, for a sec I thought he was going to tell me that I could save money by switching to Geico, but this is more intriguing. And Ohi Dad says, I'm 47 and never work out. I look younger than this immortal 51-year-old grifter.
And I just want to tell you how I save lots of money by peeing inside a bottle.
Shows the bottle!
Okay, this is my urine right here, yeah.
It's so fucking gross!
I have few of these bottles, okay, at home. I live by myself. I live in this big house by myself, and I rent a room to a friend, right? And I've been saving money all these years by peeing inside a bottle. I don't pee into the toilet. At first, I got this idea of peeing inside a bottle, not because I want to save money. It's because, you know, I'm a single man. I don't have a wife, right? And I don't like to clean, you know. Men don't like to clean. And I was peeing inside the toilet, and I realized, like, it's like, I have to clean the toilet every day. I'm sick and tired of it, you know. Not just the inside, not just the bowl. I have to clean the outside. I have to clean the rim of the toilet. I have to clean the, you know, the ground, right, near the toilet. I have to clean the floor near the toilet. This is, where else I would smell urine, you know. You know, because when a man pees, it sprays, right? Your urine sprays all over the fucking place. You know?
Okay, multiple things. First of all, as someone born with a penis. No, that's not how you're supposed to pee. Peeing with a penis doesn't mean it's gonna, like, shh. It should still be like a stream. You might have an issue with your urinary tract, please. Please, for the love of God, get checked out, Alex. Secondly, sit down. Sit down when you pee, as opposed to pee bottle. What is wrong with you, you nasty, nasty dude? Gnome Pickles says, I live by myself. You don't say. Overthought says obligatory.
Piss.
Did I miss anything else? Dragery Term says, what did I just walk in on? Comedy gold. Auntie Pretzel says, Mr. Chu, what are you doing?
You're walking in the woods. There's...
Why did that start? What are you doing? Explosive pissing everywhere. First name bunch of numbers says, this is the worst possible way to find out how bad his aim is. And Lily Love Stuff says, holding your dick to aim is gay, though.
You know, it's not like a straight shot. It's just...
It should be a straight shot. Bone Wolf, what would you like me to wear?
Spraying all over the place. And it's just... And therefore, I decided, you know what? Fuck it. I'm a single
Magic
man.
hat.
I don't like to clean. So I'm just gonna... So... These are juice bottles, right? So I just save these juice bottles and I just pee inside this bottle. I've been peeing inside a bottle for like 7 or 8 years. At least 7 or 8 years. I don't really remember when I started. But hey, you know what? This is the best. Peeing inside a bottle. First of all, I don't spray my toilet anymore. I don't pee at the toilet anymore, right? So this bottle could be anywhere.
Now I can have piss all over my house, which is way better than keeping it in the bathroom. Jamie says obligatory volume warning.
r/vexillology. The flag in Japan, but it's actually this hand towel with a perfectly placed water stain.
Oh shit, I just peed on my towel accidentally. Better turn this into cloud.
It was a water stain! I had an ice pack and it leaked onto the towel! I didn't fucking pee on it!
You peed on it. You peed on it, didn't you, little piss boy?
Hydrate.
This bottle in the living room. I put this bottle near my bed, you know?
Like a bedpan.
So
or a chamber pot.
Basically, I don't have to like walk all the way to the toilet. And also the toilet don't smell anymore. And also, you know,
or does your whole house just smell like piss because you have pee everywhere and now you're nose blind to it? Starlight did nothing wrong, says yum yum forbidden apple juice.
You know, I save shitload of money by peeing inside a bottle.
I don't believe you.
Okay. I save lots of money by peeing inside a bottle. Because 2 of us live in this big house, right? So my water bill has increased a lot. I remember when we first started, okay, my water bill was like $20 a month.
If he was really just concerned about the water bill, and I know he says it's about the cleaning too, I think this is gross, but my dad did this growing up because he was also like crazy about the water bill, even though we were fine, we weren't in financial like difficulty or anything. He was just psychotic. Anyway, he didn't want us to flush the toilet unless we pooped. He wanted all pee to just sit in the bowl until poop because he thought it was a waste of water. So that's crazy and gross. But anyway, he could at least do that, but Alex isn't even doing that. He's just peeing in bottles like a psycho.
Right now the water bill is like $40 a month. But hey, I tell you, usually I'm not the guy who's wasting water. It's my roommate. He's wasting a lot of water, you know. He takes a long shower and he has to wash his car and all that shit, you know. I don't waste water at all. In fact, I pee inside a bottle. And how I get rid of my urine, I pour it into the grass, or once a while, because I have a lot of these bottles, you know, not just one. I have like 4 or 5 of them, right?
You know, 4 or 5 pee bottles just knocking around the house, as you do.
And what I do is, I would, like once a while, okay, I would, when all my bottles are full, I just pour it into the toilet, you know, and I flush it, right? Pour into the toilet and I flush it, and that's it. So it's like I could pee inside a bottle for at least, I don't know, 50 times.
That sounds sanitary.
40 or 50 times. Then I flush it only once.
He straight up definitely sticks his penis directly in the bottle lid, right? You fully must insert and then pee, right? He must have the worst smelling penis in the history of penises. Gnome Pickles says his neighbors have to love him. No, sweetie, don't play in the grass. We live next to Chew. Also, he's definitely not washing his hands after he pees, because he's just peeing wherever he is, and then he just screws the lid back on, I'm guessing, so he probably just smells like pee all the time.
Once, you understand? I pee like 40, 50 times, and I flush it only once. So I'm saving a lot of water. You could imagine, hey, every time you flush the water, that's a lot of clean water that you flush into the toilet, man. That's a lot of clean water. I mean, my toilet would, every time, okay, the whole tank, every time when the tank is full, it's like at least 8 gallons of water. 8 gallons, man. Is that really worth it? You pee once and you waste 8 gallons of water. And especially right now in California, there's a drought, right? Everybody knows that. California, we have a drought situation, right?
Get a low-flow toilet, then, if you're that concerned about it.
So I suggest people to, if you're a man, right? If you're a man, you should get yourself a whole bunch of these bottles and just pee inside a bottle.
It gets me that he didn't even get, like, a fresh bottle for this video. He's showing us the disgusting, moldy bottle he's clearly been using for a month.
Get a bottle that has, you know, these big openings, right? And just pee right inside. Just pee right inside.
Where did you go, Cass? I heard you.
It's a little gross, but hey, you know what? It's actually cleaner than, you know, peeing at...
No, it is not. No matter what he is about to say, it is not cleaner. Nerdtacular says, my dad does this because he has a prostate problem. When he does his big full bottle dump, it reeks so much. Oh.
The toilet, because first of all, when you pee out a toilet, you basically, you make a mess, you know? You have to clean it all the time. It's where all you smell the urine.
How's this meant to be a cleanse? Because it's hilarious.
Smell the urine within 1 day, okay? You pee now, tomorrow you wake up, you smell urine at your toilet, you know? You don't have a wife, you don't have a girlfriend. Oh, that's tough, man. That's tough.
Fucking sexist. Clean your goddamn toilet, you weirdo.
So if you're a single man like me, okay, you should get yourself a whole bunch of these bottles and just pee in the bottle, you know? You save a lot of money. You save a lot of water, right? And also, you don't have to clean your toilet all the time, you know? See, I only use my toilet when I take a shit, right? When I pee, I never use the toilet. Imagine. So, anyway, that's all I want to talk about today. You know, just the tip of how to save money. Anyway, I hope you like my video. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. Have a nice day.
All right, back to John Doyle.
Yes, people don't even really pretend to care about countries since they're globalists and whatnot, openly, by the way. But he put up tariffs. He got us out of TPP. He renegotiated NAFTA.
Oh, no, recognizing we live on a planet with other nations that we have to cooperate with. The horror. Gregory Term says, and somehow John Doyle is even more gross than that guy. True.
At the Trump economy, it's soaring. The experts said the opposite would happen. Very curious, isn't it, Cato Institute? You guys suck, and I peed on your building last time I was in D.C. But he did the same thing with the national security apparatus, right? Which, of course, literally maneuvered to keep him from office, then worked to remove him from office upon his election, like we discussed. He did this with foreign policy. He's the only president to not start a new military conflict in our lifetime. He actually worked to get us out of some. People like to forget that. Before Donald Trump, virtually no Republican would dare question the post-9/11 wars. Not their motivations, not their outcomes, nothing. Even though they were obviously disasters that achieved nothing for us. And then Trump gets on stage and he calls the product of their so-called expertise a big fat mistake. He tells Jeb Bush that the Twin Towers came down under his brother. I mean, you cannot even imagine the amount of people that were their pants when he said that. I mean, you have to understand that when you run as a Republican, you're coached to never say anything even remotely like that because it will destroy your career. And you hear that and you think, oh, well, that's because it's unpopular. No, it's actually because doing so is a declaration of war upon the system, which will then try to destroy you. But Trump did it, and he was right, and it worked. Trump channeled that anger, the anger of millions of people and military families, all wondering exactly what we had received in return for our sacrifice. The Twin Towers came down under your brother. Or what about when Iran shot down that drone? People like Mike Pompeo, Mike Pence, John Bolton, who, by the way, John Bolton obviously never met a war he didn't like. And all of these neo-never-Trumpers who are now supporting DeSantis, they were celebrating when Trump hired John Bolton. And all these top advisors, these A-list figures in GOP politics, they all wanted to do a retaliatory strike.
See ya, Cult Comics. Understandable. John's rough. Hydrate. Will do.
But Trump was like, no, we'll do a little cyber attacking. We'll do a little sanctioning instead. Because, yeah, it turns out that, like, killing what would have been, I think, an estimated 150 people is not a proportionate response to a drone. And Trump had better sense than the supposed experts. But more importantly and uniquely, he was actually able to stand up to them. Even on abortion, all of the highly educated legal scholars and consultants, they all tell these candidates, okay, you're not supposed to directly mention specific legal outcomes. Trump just goes out there and he just straight up says, I will be appointing pro-life judges who will overturn Roe v. Wade. And then he actually did it. That is so fucking funny. Like, Donald John Trump is the catalyst that led to the end of Roe v. Wade. Can you imagine telling somebody in the 1980s, yeah, Donald Trump is going to take care of this for you guys. Don't even worry. It'll be tremendous. You'll see many people are saying that this is also true. Like, that's the thing. You know, Trump made it so we didn't have to be neutral anymore. We didn't have to pretend that, oh, hey, we could be wrong. Trump did away with this whole myth of the neutral institutions. With all of these issues, immigration, foreign policy, transnational governance, the political establishment and the elites before Trump had simply decided. They had removed all of these fundamentally political questions from the realm of political discussion. It was just a consensus. There's no room for debate. There's not even need for debate because the experts had taken care of that for us already. So voters didn't matter. Literally, the only thing that mattered was the opinion of the expert class, which of course always coincidentally benefited them and their friends at the expense of the American people. And so all of these candidates we got to pick from, we could only like hesitantly and reluctantly pick from whichever of these candidates most sufficiently articulated how hard they believed in this idea of America, how much they love this idea of America. Trust me, everything's fine. The adults are in control. The point being that in almost all cases, Trump actually put first what was best for the American people instead of just ideological purity, meaning was some nerd with a bunch of abstract theories who's never actually lived in the real world told him was best. Well, principles. What about principles?
Thinking Trump has ever lived in the real world as someone who's been rich since birth is super weird to me.
It doesn't matter if you're principled, if you're...
Like, I don't think John even lived in the real world. John's parents were relatively well off. Like, John's done fine his entire life. Starlight Did Nothing Wrong says, oh yeah, I love having my bodily autonomy under constant threat. Thanks, douchebag.
Principles suck. Oh, well, at least I'm principled. No, you're a loser and you suck. That's your conviction. And you, like, want people to know that or something. The principles that these people boast about, by the way, they have destroyed the American dream. They have made our country dangerous. Our children are preyed upon. Our men are weak and impotent. Our women are depressed. That's the least of their problems. And what grand benefit of this whole system have we received that outweighs all of that, that would make it all worth it? The freedom to pursue anal sex, gluttony, genital mutilation, bestiality, deracination, pornography, drug addiction, heresy, narcissism, like
literally just Nazi fucking talking points.
Who's winning right now? Satan. Yeah, like literally that's the only beneficiary and those serving him. And those people don't let us speak the truth. How many dozens of times during those debates did Trump say something that we all know is true, but that nobody else would say, usually to the vocal disapproval of the audience, of donors and special interest group representatives, etc. They would just start booing him and he would just roll his eyes and he would double down that it was true, which it actually was more often than not. That's why he's great. He's not an ideologue. He's just a normal American patriot. Like we've been saying, there is no Trumpism without Trump because there is no Trumpism.
Bone Wolf Connor, thanks for 11 months.
There is just Donald J. Trump. You can try to reduce it to an abstraction, you can try to quantify it, but you would be a fool because the value of the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Trump has shifted the party attitudes in a way that has been very positive for the future of our country. He gave us the permission to say aloud what everybody's been thinking. But of course, usual suspects, the financial and ideological apparatuses of the right, the donors, the elites, the neocon establishment, legacy media, think tanks, etc. All of these people are still basically the same. And if anything, they've doubled down. They're bitter now. They're out for revenge. Those people who were booing him, they're still around. They're still working in politics, and they're probably very willing to use their influence and infrastructure to prop up a candidate to replace Trump, a candidate who may very well be well-meaning, but who will ultimately be used by very bad people to subvert the Trump revolution into something that's more friendly to the pre-Trump political establishment, because that really hasn't changed at all. And I mean, the elites in both parties are still very committed to terrible policy, like Ukraine, Taiwan, etc. Oh, well, Trump can't follow through. A partial disruption and general halting is better than efficient execution of like retardation, right? Like we agree with that. I'm not pretending that Trump could do everything that he said he wanted to do, but he did face unified opposition from Democrats, from the leaders of his own party, from the intelligence agencies. I'm just over here asking why. Why was there a coordinated effort to prevent Trump from exercising the powers of the...
Because he's shitty. Because he wants to do things that are bad. It's not hard to get.
Presidency from day one. With Russiagate, the 2 impeachment trials, now it's culminated in the investigation by the Department of Justice, et cetera, et cetera. You can think what you want about that, but it's undeniable that he has been targeted not simply because he's a criminal bad guy, but because he threatens powerful...
No, I think it's mostly the first one. Like, honestly, genuinely, it's mostly the first one. There are certainly Republicans out there like the Lincoln Project or whatever the one is where they like are the, what are they called? Was it the Lincoln Project? Either way, there are definitely establishment Republicans who see the very real threat Trump stands to their own image and their own apparatus for fundraising. I don't disagree, but most of the people who oppose Trump because he's a shitty guy who does shitty things and says awful shit that leads to violence against people.
Interests in the world and in our country. But people want to deny this, so they'll hope for Trumpism without Trump. They like the agenda, but they think, well, Trump is too problematic. So if for whatever reason the deep state is determined to keep Trump away from the White House, well, then our best course of action is just to nominate someone who can actually get things done. Like all this stuff, it makes sense on paper. It really does. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding of the essence of politics. It's not just about good policy and bad policy. It is a struggle for power between opposing forces. If someone isn't being seriously prevented from accessing power that we all know is controlled by very bad people, then it must be that they don't actually believe that that person would use that power against them or their interests. So while I understand the frustration with the first Trump administration, and trust me, I do more than anybody, you might even remember that I was meticulously critiquing it as it went on, it's truly just ridiculous, this whole write-off Trump because he didn't do anything. Trump received more pushback than any figure in American political history, and he wasn't dependent on donor money or special interest money, lobbyists. For all intents and purposes, he was not a part of the political system. And people think that a guy who doesn't check all those boxes, or even any of them, is going to handle the pressure from the system better. And even it's a false dichotomy because that guy would never get that pressure because for all intents and purposes, he is a part of that system and therefore it's not threatened by him.
A point I should have made here on the allegation that Trump didn't do anything. When people on the right say that, both those who support Trump and those who don't, we still bear in mind that Trump sustained a tremendous economy, cut immigration in half, pulled us out of military conflicts and uniquely didn't start any new ones, renegotiated trade deals to be advantageous to us, and more. So what do we mean when we lament, or lambaste, that Trump didn't get anything done? It is contextual to what we understand Trump to be, which as we discuss here at length is essentially a threat to our current political establishment. Therefore the reason people claim that he didn't get anything done is because what he was talking about was so aspiring insofar as it was challenging the entire structure and consensus of our political system, how it works. That's what people expected of him.
You'd rather talk about Blu-ray recommendations? Me too.
Which is their frustration.
I got more Blu-rays and stuff, by the way. I know I have the little, like, gift notes downstairs, so I could, thank you guys, but I have the batch downstairs, so next stream I'll thank the people who got that stuff.
In their vague reminders of what he didn't get done. That is understandable. It becomes ridiculous when they, through the help of Khan Incorporated astroturfing, begin to suggest that just plugging in somebody who gets things done at the state level, things that would be the equivalent of what Trump did get done in
Yeah, I don't like this robot voice.
Office, more or less just keeping the trains running on time, as if that's the solution to actually challenge our political system and change things for the better. Citing the
I have 10,666 followers. Nice.
The accomplishments of alternatives to Trump is comically misguided. Their project was never as ambitious.
In order to actually challenge the system, you would need somebody who could survive all of its attempts to destroy them. Media blackout, doesn't matter. Household name. Elites and megacorporations won't donate to the campaign, doesn't matter. He's got his own money. He's self-funded. Like, you would
He didn't actually self-fund his campaign. He completely reimbursed himself by donations people made.
literally need somebody who is good on the issues, doesn't give a damn about what anybody thinks about them, is crazy enough to believe that he could actually pull it off despite all the opposition they're doing to him, that it's actually worth it for him to keep going. They've got the money to fund the whole thing themselves if they have to. They're already famous. They're hilarious. They're cool. You would need Donald Trump, basically. So if it's not him, tell me who else checks all those boxes, and I'll jump ship, I guess. But there's no one else. Trump is a once-in-a-lifetime political figure. Like, you're never going to see something like this for the rest of your life again.
Oh, God, wouldn't that be nice? Ah.
And you'll notice that
the thought of that is so relieving, just in hypothetical.
nobody who's a part of the system is willing to say that, because they ultimately either benefit from it or they still have...
The worst part is I'm not even 30 yet. I probably have... there's probably going to be a politician way worse than Trump who's going to get to be the president in my lifetime. That's sad. Just statistically.
Faith in it, or both. But, like, you need somebody who's going to go in there and just torch the whole thing. And the man for that job is Donald Trump, because the key point is that you can be within the system without being a piece of the system. Like, Trump existed within it, but DeSantis, by all metrics, is cut from the same cloth as the system. And we will explain and discuss the implications of this as we continue. But Trump is talking about fundamentally restructuring the federal government akin to FDR, akin to Lincoln. That is beautiful. Apparently, he hasn't even spoken to Kushner seriously since everything that went down in 2020. And he knows he can only serve 2 terms. He only probably wants to. I mean, King Trump, that's a meme. Which means that he knows if he were ever to go scorched earth mode and get his revenge, it would be in his 2nd term. And, I mean, if he doesn't, what does that even look like? Okay, DeSantis stays in Florida, continues to set an example for what governing a red state should look like. Maybe he does an even better job. He gets Florida more aggrandized, gets the base more aggrandized, builds up his war chest for 2028, wins the presidency. I have no real problem with that. I want him to succeed. I want him to make Florida even redder. I want him to make America even redder if he's really the man for the job. But why would he want to get into bed with the GOP establishment to try to steal the torch from Donald Trump? Are we really supposed to believe that's an improvement? That the most powerful people in the country are fools? We're smarter than them because we know that they're just opening the gates and letting in the Trojan horse that is Ron DeSantis, the true threat to the system. But with Trump in office for another 4 years, even assuming he doesn't do anything, which I think is unrealistic, I think that almost all of the things that were causing him to be less effective than we would have liked in terms of his ability to operate without being like distracted or dissuaded by his constituents, all of those have more or less been corrected, at least that I'm aware of. I've heard from people who would know. So, you know, people can just say, oh, it's going to be a repeat of the first administration. The variables that caused that have largely been removed, which maybe isn't a perfect indicator, but it's not insignificant. But even then, what did the Trump presidency do? Its greatest accomplishment was exposing the rot within our system and within our country at every level. It exposed.
Ironically, I would probably agree with that, but again, not exactly the same. Not the same way John's saying.
The bitterness.
Trump's administration absolutely pointed out a lot of problems ongoing with our system, yes.
And the viciousness of about 1/3 of the country. It exposed the sheer level of dishonesty and corruption within the media, within the bureaucracy, academia, the government, like everywhere. And yeah, you know, maybe people knew about that 10, 15, 50 years ago. Now it is unquestionable. It's never been more obvious. This vampire is now screeching, and it's because the man with the golden mane pulled back the curtain, and now sunlight is beaming off of its skin. And you know what else? It was also extraordinarily entertaining. It brought us hope. We really believed that the best days were ahead. You could feel the optimism. And people take this energy for granted. They think that it can still exist without Donald Trump. It can't. Oh, if we could only channel this energy into our based populist candidate who gets things done. That's just not how it works. But that's what the conservative establishment is going to try to do. Mark my words, after midterms, when they don't immediately need Trump's name for fundraising, they're going to try to officially start to move people away from Donald Trump, who's too problematic, and support a serious candidate like Ron DeSantis. All the better if Trump gets indicted after midterms. Do you understand how many of our voters will just give up on the system if it betrays Donald Trump? That's why the...
God, I fucking hope so. That's the good ending. It genuinely would be if every Trump person was dissuaded from voting ever again. And let me be clear, everyone has the right to vote. I would never want to take away or make it more difficult for anyone to vote. But if just through the result of Donald Trump being held accountable for his potential alleged crimes, if that makes them feel like they don't want to vote anymore, that'd be pretty rad.
The electability, that whole argument is so ridiculous. He who is most electable is he who will get the most votes by definition, and there's no question as to who that is. What you mean to say is that you want your little respectability politics back, but we're not going to allow that. When Donald Trump mogs Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi...
The optimist in you really wants to believe the GOP won't win Congress tomorrow. I guess we'll see. Make sure everyone goes and votes. That's all we can do is do our best. Hopefully people, if they could, worked for, phone banks and knocking on doors and stuff. I've had quite a few people come to my door and talk to me about stuff, so. No matter what, we'll be here the day after, and we'll continue dealing with this all together. I know a lot of the people in my audience are vulnerable people like myself who are very close to potentially having certain rights taken away, which is not good, but no matter what, we are together, and we will do what we need to do. History is full of times that are hard for different people for different reasons, but there are always people who get through it and work together to make things better. And we will do that.
In front of news cameras, is that respectable politics? Only Donald Trump could ever and would ever do something like that, and he did it daily. But I could tell you otherwise. I really could. I mean, that's where the money is right now. That's where the grift is. There's a ton of money to be made in selling people false hope, selling them snake oil during the managed decline of our country. I could sell you that. I mean, I could sell you this new idea, this new thing, new strategy to save America. That's what people like to hear. It's fresh. It makes them feel good. It's exciting. It's new. But that's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to tell you, look, Donald Trump, for all of his faults, is still by far the best shot that we have right now. That's just the truth. And again,
if that's the case, if I genuinely believed that was entirely the case with no caveats, I would feel so much better. I would. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Genuinely. Tomorrow is going to be an indicator of a lot, because this is a midterm after Trump lost. So how willing the United States is willing to go along with Trump-like candidates, we'll find out tomorrow. I sincerely, sincerely hope things turn out better than I'm hoping.
You can't refute anything.
Bumble Homestead says, I wish it need not have happened in my time, said Frodo. So do I, said Gandalf, and so do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. Yeah. Am I streaming tomorrow or taking the day off? Nah, I'll have an answer for you in just a sec. Probably streaming tomorrow. I know I'm going to hang out with Jake and some friends and staying the night, but that's a little later in the day, so I can probably stream if I stream earlier. Either way, I'll definitely be streaming Wednesday, though, and we can do some post-election stuff.
Anything that we've said so far, you might not like it.
If I do miss tomorrow for some reason, then it'll probably be like either Tinfoil Wednesday if I don't have a ton to say about the election, or Tinfoil Thursday. We'll do Tinfoil this week no matter what, but it may or may not be tomorrow depending on how other things fall and when I actually am planning on leaving to go to Jake's, because it takes an hour and a half or so to get to his place from where I live. So.
It probably annoys you, but it's true.
What website do I use for tracking my DVD Blu-rays? Blu-ray.com.
Yeah, there's a lot of Trump grifters.
I also have an app on my tablet that also is just called My Movies, where I have... I don't know if you guys can... later. These are all my movies that I have on Blu-ray and DVD. Do you guys want to know how many I have currently according to this app? Blu-ray.com counts my titles slightly differently than this app. What kind of tablet is this? This is a Samsung like S10 Plus or something, I think. Anyway, I have 1,267 movies according to this. It's actually higher than that. This needs to update. It's up to 1,280 something now, I think. I own a lot of movies.
Left over, but most of them have moved on to Ron DeSantis.
Do I collect VHS? I haven't really made a concerted effort, though I do have some VHS. I have some stuff that's been gifted to me. I have the Little Mermaid VHS that got recalled because of the phallic castle. And I do have a VHS player. So I in theory could collect VHS, but I haven't really dipped my toe into it.
Other characters, but you'll notice they never even really understood what he ran on in 2016. Oftentimes they even undermine it. I've been on the Trump train for 7 years, and you know, if you've been on as well, it costs you a lot. It costs you relationships, it costs you money, it can cost you your reputation.
Mr. Blast, thanks for 18 months. This sub baby's name is going to be Elgort Tostada. Elgort Tostada.
But the answer to that isn't to cower and go towards something less problematic, because that just reinforces and justifies the persecution.
Do I want an original New Hope in Search of a Good Home? I have bootleg Blu-rays of the original cuts.
In the first place, it tells them, hey, it works when you do that. And that's typically what we're seeing nowadays. You know, you've got these people who just absolutely hate Trump. They absolutely love DeSantis. And usually that just is a proxy for, I want my liberal friends to tolerate me still. Like, come on, guys.
I mean, it would be nice to be able to have relationships with other human beings, you know, by expressing some sort of empathy for people other than yourself.
At least it's not Trump. That's what Biden means when he says mainstream Republican, by the way. You know, when he gave that speech declaring war on Trump supporters, it's like we talked about in the What Happens If Trump Loses video. They want to tell you, oh, no, we don't have a problem with Republicans. It's just Trump. It's just Trump. He's bad. Yeah.
Trump is bad. Hot take. I don't know if anyone's heard this. Orange Man bad. Orange Man real bad. Gnome Pickle says, I'm like that with VHS, though many of those are due to having no cables as a boy, so I would use my grandparents' VCR to record hours of cartoons and watch them on Saturdays. Ooh.
Of course they don't have a problem.
No cable, not cables, I said, sorry.
With the Republican establishment. They keep the trains of war, mass immigration, deracination, all that, they keep that running on time. And I urge you to understand that just because DeSantis is occasionally bullied by left-wing publications does not make his persecution or fortitude comparable to the complete coordinated, which we have proof of, by the way, the coordination. It doesn't make him comparable to the type of media and legal blitzkrieg against Trump. Like the migrant busing stunt, that was a great photo op, very clever. Now they're on a pathway to citizenship because remember, the second they threatened to bring down a little heat on him, he quit doing it. That's what Trumpism without Trump would look like. The establishment GOP wants so badly to shoehorn Trumpism into these abstractions and categories that are ultimately non-threatening and which are contained within the paradigm, even if on the edge of it. It's still ultimately, even if less obviously, towing the line. It doesn't really matter if it was like with less patience given to journalists while it did so. People aren't going to get off the couch and vote because of a big tech bill that frankly didn't even do anything. They're not going to do it because they're excited by based, populist, antitrust legislation. These people are not ideologues. They're normal Americans. It's not blue-collar workers. It's not the evangelicals or the religious right.
Yes, MAGA are not ideologues. They're normal Americans. A very true statement that does not make me want to I can't make Minecraft jokes anymore. Stone Corbell says, in case anyone was wondering, deracination is a dog whistle for white genocide. Oof.
It's none of these.
How have I not heard that one before?
Categories. It's simply normal Americans. Trump didn't win because he was a populist. He won because he
won because he was a populist.
Said he was going to kick out illegal aliens and then make their family members pay for a wall. It's not that.
Yeah, that's populist, right-wing, xenophobic, like isolationist rhetoric. Yep.
His rhetoric and messaging was like edgy or unpolished or blue collar or whatever. It's that it was fundamentally anti-establishment, even just in that it was politically incorrect. Not even that necessarily. It was like real. It wasn't curated. It didn't have to go through the focus group testing. It didn't have to be telephoned through the bureaucracy, through the class of credentialed experts or whatever. It was literally just one guy with a few bullet points on a note card for 2 hours. It fundamentally challenged everything that the establishment is built upon and everything that they've tried so hard to get the American people to believe in. It was fundamentally anti-feminist. It was anti-equality, anti-diversity, anti-globalism, anti-egalitarian. Most importantly, it was funny. It was fun. And that's all to say it was real. It was American. Donald Trump didn't look at this uptight college girl when she tried to corner him on the wage gap and cite data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics about how, actually, when you account for hours worked and experience, the gap disappears. He just said, you're going to make the same if you do as good a job. He literally implied that it's because women don't work as well as men. That is hilarious. No one else has the balls to say that. What did Trump
Again, he's just an asshole and wrong.
say when Megyn Kelly brought up his comments about women? As if that matters, by the way. Literally as if that has any implication on anything ever. He dubbed...
Do you not think how you treat half of the population of the world is going to have a bearing on you as a person? If you look at 50% of the population as people that you can take advantage of, then you're a bad person and shouldn't be in charge of anything.
Doubles down. Only Rosie O'Donnell, and the people loved it. The next day, he goes on television to basically accuse her of being in a bad mood because she was on her period. It does not get more transgressive than that. Think about that. There is unironically not a series of comments that he could have made that would have been more antithetical to everything that the establishment believes and everything that they want to get you to believe, which they've tried so hard to get you to. I don't like his tone. Literally, who cares about tone? Women and effeminate men. For every one person who doesn't like his tone, there's a dozen new voters who like him precisely because of his tone. And the worst...
I don't think that's true.
thing they
Again, the 2020 election results are pretty indicative of that. People were incredibly complacent in 2016 because Hillary wasn't a good candidate and people didn't take Trump seriously. Clearly, when people take Trump seriously, it's made fairly evident that it's pretty close to people who love him and hate him, unfortunately.
had on this guy was that he stated the fact
Biden luckily edged it out, but still.
that women will let rich and powerful men touch them. That was their big reveal. That was their
No, the reveal is that clearly he thinks that and is framing it that way, but what he is describing is sexual assault. I don't understand how this is still a fundamental miscommunication in 2022. It's not about rich guys, whatever weird, like, MGTOW, like, I-word ideology you're talking about, rich guys get laid. No! It's about him describing sexual assault and acting as though it is not a big deal. KBS says, this is a World War II army propaganda movie called Don't Be a Sucker. It was made in the 1940s. It's like Trump watched it and wrote his speeches. Yeah, we've seen that before on Public Domania. It's a pretty interesting anti-fascist thing.
October surprise. Like, what, are we supposed to believe that these other people are perfect? Probably not. So the question becomes, why isn't the establishment media targeting them? Because
Gnome Pickles says, showing that sexual assault isn't taken seriously by our society is not a win, Doyle. It's a fundamental flaw of our culture, bruv.
because they're controlled opposition. They play the role of the opposition. And maybe they're doing so with the best of intentions. But ultimately, the people who pull the strings know that they don't actually pose a legitimate threat. And those who don't understand this, like, at this point, you're just out of touch. I mean, they still believe in our political establishment, which is to say that they believe that everything that has happened to our country in the last 60 years, everything that has destroyed it, it's basically been justified. And even if that's not the case, even if they don't believe that, they still just want to vote in like another career politician. They want to just roll the dice with a new guy. These people, I don't want to call anybody out. Look, I'm a businessman, okay? My job is to get along with people, okay? I get along with everybody. So we'll just make up a name. Okay, so we'll call this guy Ben Shapiro. So this Ben Shapiro guy has a viral clip where somebody asks him at a Q&A about who Republicans should run in 2024. And he's got this great UCLA poli-sci explanation about the cycle of elections being a referendum on this political candidate or this political candidate. And it's like, no, dude, it's a referendum on the whole political establishment, the entire thing. And until that changes, that's all it's ever going to be, bottom line. And I think Shapiro's better on the issues than he gets credit for, especially with young people. Young people really like to criticize him as a way to kind of signal their political development, since a lot of people started out with him. But he's still right on a lot of issues, you know, but when he's wrong, he's he's pretty off the mark. 1 second, please. Product time. Look, you know how much I love iTarget, and if you have one, 3 now, Fast Philadelphia. itargetpro.com. Offer code Doyle. Very epic. We continue.
Stone Corbell says
fast forward to the
if Doyle's job is to get along with everyone, he's absolutely terrible on it. I think he was being tongue-in-cheek.
An unapologetic declaration of war on normal Americans. Biden goes to Philadelphia, delivers remarks on the soul of the nation from Independence Hall. And despite the fact that the GOP wants to obfuscate what the purpose of this speech was, which we'll get into, it's like unambiguous. It's like so clear throughout the entire speech, the messaging, the aesthetics. The speech was nothing short of a declaration of war against normal Americans.
Again, John, being a fascist is not being a normal American. I understand that rebranding has been really helpful to white supremacists in the last decade with the Richard Spencer types and the whole alt-right thing, but people are kind of over that shit, and they still recognize now that you are what you are. Please stop trying to rebrand white nationalism, you fucking shit.
Who he referred to in this address as an enemy horde. So if you voted for Donald Trump, you are an enemy horde member. And, you know, we've been talking about this here. We talked about this 2 years ago. This is the attempt to feign bipartisanship, to emphasize that the Orange Man, he really just was that bad by extending an
Orange Man is that bad.
olive branch from the Democrat establishment to the establishment Republicans, literally two sides of the same coin, to say, look, obviously we have disagreements.
One side of the
Americans, damn it.
coin... One side of the coin wants me to be dead. So.
And if we can just agree that those other people
Fenekagami says Doyle is proof how fashy the entire gun industry is.
are the problem, then we can get back to business. And of course, they want to get back to business because that means no serious change will ever actually occur. That's also why he repeats in this speech that America's just an idea, man. Come on, it's an idea. America's an idea. This is fundamentally no different than what the GOP establishment and the neocons believe, that America is just this idea and nothing else. And the harder you just believe in this idea that is America, the more American you are. And the only difference between the two parties is that Democrats believe that being an
Rin does a hats off. What would you like me to wear, Rin?
American means being gay and like worshiping minorities, and Republicans believe that being
Ew.
an American is just being able to make money. Who's more American? I want an answer from Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell.
Bring back
Who
the
is more
Jadora.
American?
I fucking hate you.
A gay white guy who moved here like 5 years ago from England or something, or a Somali who was born in Minneapolis, speaks zero English, but has like a locally popular hot dog stand. Which one is more American? I'm a one-issue voter. This is my wedge issue, okay? We the people demand answers. And you know, they would actually, they would probably both agree that the hot dog stand is the more American guy. Hell yeah, brother. Hey, long as them headscarves come in American flag print, I ain't got no problem. Shoot.
Wow.
I might even get my daughter one. The point being that, like we mentioned, you know, this is actually the same messaging that was being articulated by the GOP frontrunners in 2016.
Hbeard says being American means being gay. Wow, I actually agree with John about something. And Stone Corbell says, what person born in Minneapolis doesn't speak English? Yeah, it's a complete fucking straw, man. It's super weird.
It's all the same status
It's just racism. It's just racism.
quo, and that's why they have to ostracize and demonize Trump and his base, because that's the only force that actually has serious potential to change things for the better in this country. And it's not just because they're voters for the opposite party. No, that's what the GOP is telling you that this speech meant, but it's specifically...
Dahlia Vianney says, had to leave during Piss Boy and just came back. Hope I haven't missed any important Doyle content. There is no such thing as important Doyle content, so you could not have missed it.
Only Trump voters, because they've actually demonstrated that they're not buying anymore what the GOP is trying to sell to them. They want actual and legitimate change in this country, and it starts by rejecting the whole political establishment. And believe me, they reject it wholeheartedly. But remember, if you hold these ideas, you're a Nazi. That's why Biden brought up...
No, John, you're a Nazi because you explicitly don't want women to have the right to vote and want people who aren't white out of the country and want them to be subservient to white people. That's why you're a Nazi.
Charlottesville. He's...
Scorptane, thanks for 6 months. You also fundamentally don't believe in democracy or equality. You know, cool stuff.
Said when he saw Charlottesville, that's when he knew he had to run. Like, what does that even mean? What does it mean when you look at an event as insignificant as Charlottesville?
Ah, yes, the big Nazi rally where they killed a woman.
and decide that that's like the basis for your entire campaign, it means that if you're a normal white American who cares about your country and cares about your heritage, you are for all intents and purposes a Nazi. Like, you're the problem. You're the
Only if you're a fascist who doesn't think people should have the right to vote and wants to make sure that LGBT people can't be allowed in public and thinks that minorities should basically just sit down and shut up about issues that affect them.
the threat to democracy. You're an extremist. Whatever. Extremist literally just means that you're on the extreme of the bell curve distribution of American political thought. And at this point, why would you not? Like, how could you?
Stone Corbell says, if you're a normal white American, wow, we're just going completely mask off now. Yep.
Not be an extremist, because otherwise you're in the middle, which means you're clearly not intelligent enough to detect that there's something seriously wrong in this country. Moreover, that is defined in practice as holding the average opinions of a man in this country like 50 years ago. So it doesn't even mean anything. Your literal party platform is mutilating the genitals of children. That's what you're about. Like, no prominent member of your party
I don't know why this I know why this keeps getting brought up, because it's a scare tactic 4chan bullshit thing. No one's doing surgery on children. Not how this works. I am an adult trans woman, and I do not have easy access to surgery. No one in this country is performing surgery for that on children. Period. It's just a boogeyman the right has made up in order to try and scare middle-of-the-road voters who don't pay attention to anything and don't know any trans people to be afraid of us.
Disavow that. Extremists, yeah, you're damn right. But that's why they like the mainstream Republicans, the non-threatening Republicans, the stiff ones with the lifeless eyes, the low energy. Guess what? Guess what? Fact check. MAGA Republicans are the mainstream Republicans. There are tens of millions of us. We're not going anywhere. We're smarter than you. We have more energy. We're better looking than you, which is to say that children don't wince when they see us in public, which honestly is becoming something of a delicacy in American politics, thanks to you dysgenic, depraved freaks. You people think that you're like made from the stock of revolutionaries of days past. You can't even make eye contact with a barista when you're ordering a coffee. You're not inspired. You're united by nothing except shared misery. So yeah, we'll be the problem, children. We're the problem in America because we don't want to stop what's happening. We actually want to completely change the course. They're actually correct that we can't exist in this country anymore, because we can't. Eventually, conditions will become too disordered and unsustainable. We've never been so far left as a country before, yet the left is more miserable and hateful than ever. And eventually,
I don't know if I'd agree with that, John. We've moved a lot on social issues, which is great. The fact that, I can go out and be myself with only being somewhat concerned about being assaulted. Hey, that's an improvement from some decades ago. But no, we're not really that far left as a country, especially economically. Are you fucking kidding me?
the right will develop the moral courage to stop these people.
The moral courage to shit on minority groups. What fucking courage, John?
I believe so, because what else would we do? What is the soul of the nation in practice? Like violent crime, the silencing of dissent, the inescapable promotion of ugliness, the destruction of beauty, the celebration of anal sex and genital mutilation.
John, I think about anal sex less than you, and I have had things in my ass. I just want to point that out.
The incessant demonization of white people, the literal worship of non-white people. Think about that. Think about how, in like a Catholic monarchy, there would be no decision.
Mass Lunacy says, I'm so sure the most of these right-wing talking points have been born out of a fetish discussion. The only time I've ever seen actual white genocide talking points are in race-based cuckold circles. Oh my god.
Made at the institutional level, which did not first ask, well, how would God feel about this? We do the same thing here, except it's like, okay, well, how would black people feel about this? Should we keep going? A war on everything natural, on the creation of families, on motherhood, on femininity.
Did you just compare asking if an imaginary religious being cares about something is the same as asking if, like, 15% of the population like something? Because those are fundamentally different things. Like, black people exist in America as a real thing that are constituents. God is not, John. Politicians should care about the people that voted them in or are part of the population in their constituency. Tea with Goblin says, back from doctor's appointment, got myself a referral to a general practitioner who will prescribe low-dose tea and my booster shot. Queer and vaccinated and happy. My existence enrages the alt-right. Much love to you.
On masculinity, on God, of course. Any declaration of right and wrong that transcends the current state of our national moral compass, which is just tolerance towards degeneracy. We can keep going, but the present soul of this country is disgusting. It is unnatural. It is abominable. It's dysgenic. It's doughy. It's mentally unwell. It's neurotic. It's chaotic. It's destructive.
John is never neurotic, by the way. He comes off as very even-keeled.
To the human spirit, to our actual souls. And keep in mind,
his constant discussions of anal sex and degeneracy that he just perceives everywhere. Definitely not neurotic behavior, by the way.
These things are not defects. They're not bugs. These are all features of the machine. Each of these things cannot be compromised on by these people. They are all pillars that support this system. They are a part of its foundations. They are all intrinsically componental to it. So when they say that we're a threat to the soul of the country, sure, yeah, the same way that water is a threat to fire, or chemotherapy is a threat to cancer, chlorine is a threat to bacteria. Like, there's nothing you can do to stop it, by the way. We're too far into it. It's the Dark Brandon speech, which is just pathetic. It's the show trials. It's the censorship. It's all of it. You know what's waiting for you down the line, and you can try to stop it or delay it, but that's just going to make it more satisfying for us when we beat you. So, yeah, we are actually going to restore the proper soul of this nation, and you'll be better off for it. It's a thankless job, truly. Like we always say, we're going to make America great again for you two. Don't even worry about it. And that's the point of optimism in this speech by Biden. It reveals how fragile their power really is. You've got a very weak, pitiful man attempting to portray strength through
He's the president.
Visuals. His staff thought this would be so cool. The red lighting, the Marines. Yeah, let's...
I mean, it was cool enough that Republicans freaked out about it for like a week and were like, oh my God, he's a communist Stalin dictator now. Look at all the red behind him.
Own the maggots. But at the end of the day, you've got the most establishment political figure in the country, Joe Biden. He's been around for 50 years. He's completely senile now. But that's your guy. That's the guy that you people are propping up.
And he won. Surprise.
How pathetic. Imagine the conversations within the administration, all the inside jokes. Imagine the other world leaders that partake in mocking you people and, you know, the whole staff, and when they're talking with their staffers, whatever. This is the culmination. Like, this is the ultimate form of American liberalism.
John is such a big alpha boy that he makes his political position decisions on whether or not other people are mean to him and might laugh at him. Discordant Vol says, oh hey, it's Nathan Bedford Fuckstick. Ooh, almost on a boost train.
How out of touch are you people?
Like, Trump got mocked at the UN. They literally laughed in his face.
How terrified are you people? What an ugly thing you've done. What a crime against aesthetics to try to portray this confused, decrepit old man as some sort of strong man so that you could all masturbate to your self-perceived power. You called Trump standing on a balcony a Mussolini moment because you realized it was like incidentally cool and portrayed strength, which you felt...
No, I think people mostly made fun of that because he was really wheezy. I don't remember hearing like a Mussolini comparison at the time.
Threatened by until you compared it to fascism.
People were just like, oh my God, he clearly isn't breathing very well because he had COVID.
But then you try to mimic that with Dark Brandon, but you fail because you cannot make...
Dark Brandon is basically a meme that came about as a joke about how Republicans throw out of proportion Biden shit. People on the left are aware that Biden is a milquetoast whatever. Dark Brandon is a meme making fun of you, John, and people like you. Maybe not you specifically, because even here you're playing the card that, like, Biden's a loser. A lot of people on the right, you know this, don't portray him like that, especially on social media. You saw the whole right wing freaking out about his speech because of the red light thing. It's making fun of that. Fenekagami says they freak out over once being called a threat to the nation. Meanwhile, Trump never shuts up about how much of a threat the left is to the nation. 23% to level 1 on the boost train.
Make shilling for the establishment cool or edgy. Like, oh yeah, Dark Brandon's gonna let gay couples adopt children. Listen here, Jack, here's the deal. Look, your son's gonna chop his dick off, and if you disagree, you ain't American.
Yeah, that's not how anything works.
That's real freedom, man. Come on. God bless it. So based! Dark Brandon epic! Upvotes! But even that aside, like how pathetic it was, we still have to consider the implications of it. Because the last time a speech like that was given, a real fire and brimstone speech, that was with George Bush when he was like targeting Saddam Hussein in Iraq or whatever, maybe even Reagan with the evil empire. But this time Joe Biden is targeting domestic opposition to the incumbent regime, which is between 70 and 80
Oh man, it's almost like domestic threats to the United States are a real and present danger. Crazy.
million Trump voters. And there was so much thought that went into this speech, into the visuals of it. I mean, literally everything that you are seeing and hearing was meticulously decided by people. And so why? Well, it's the same reason that Bush gave the speech. It's to prepare the public for war. It's to prime them for it. Except this time, as referenced by other prominent members in the Democratic Party, these enemies are domestic. And
Stop being a domestic threat then, and literally being domestic terrorists. Bumble Homestead, thanks for gifting a tier 1 sub, 54% to level 1.
they're enemies insofar as they actually threaten the power of the incumbent regime, or at least intend to do so. That's why he specifically targets the MAGA Republicans. That's why he uses the language clear and present danger. That's why he's bringing up the horrific violence of the insurrection. All these lies, he's basically giving the green light.
You know we have that on video, right, John? People getting, like, beaten and shit on January 6th?
To the national security apparatus and to federal law enforcement to like go ahead and crack down on all serious dissent. And this was only a month after the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, which again, totally unprecedented. They didn't
It's also unprecedented for the president to steal a bunch of classified documents, but here we are.
even raid Nixon. They didn't even charge him either. Not that he did anything
He got pardoned.
wrong, because he didn't, but he didn't do anything wrong less than Trump.
Okay, S-wording for Nixon. That's good. That makes you look good, John.
Probably. And you're talking about institutions which have been caught illegally spying.
Reminder that Nixon literally paid people to break into the DNC headquarters in Watergate in order to spy on them.
On the campaign, spying on citizens,
Yes, the FBI and the National Archive asked for months for the papers back, and Trump refused and then lied about giving them all back. And then they went and checked, and no, he didn't. Surprise.
fabricating evidence against these people, et cetera, et cetera. And now they're being encouraged, sometimes even like against their will, to persecute the political enemies of the regime. And they're hoping that Trump gets charged and is removed from the running, and or it's just too much for the already weak GOP leadership.
Discordant Vol with 500 bits says, don't forget Robert Bork.
Class
86% to level 1 in a boost train.
To handle. And so they just abandon Trump, they move on to somebody who's less problematic or whatever. And what's maybe
Vast lunacy, living up to the name. As always, thank you for gifting 20 tier 1 subs to the community. Thank you, Vast Lunacy, our patron saint of subs.
even more alarming is that they are so ready, like their mouths are watering at the idea of taking any outrage from Trump's base and pushback from Trump's political allies and making examples of those people.
15% to level 6.
Mobilizing the National Guard, moving forward with the domestic war on terror, putting these people in prison, using these obscure legal measures in order to target Trump's allies within the government, putting these people in handcuffs.
Ah, yes, obscure legal measures, like, I don't know, not showing up to a congressional hearing that you were subpoenaed to and then being found in contempt of Congress. Very obscure. Kingdom Reborn! Thanks for gifting 20 more tier 1 subs. Man, we've been on such a great, like, hot gift sub streak. I have so many subscribers to the channel now. It's awesome. Thank you so much, Kingdom Reborn and Vast Lunacy. 37% to level 8.
On television, that's what they want. They want the image of whatever advocacy normal American patriots think they have left. They want the image of that person or those people in handcuffs on your television in your living room. That's what they want. They want that person humiliated, and they want to demoralize you. They want to put your president in handcuffs on national television.
I mean, don't pick a president who breaks the law all the time then. Eventually something might stick.
And they're going to commercialize it. They're going to sell merchandise of it. And
Kaipati, thanks for 9 months, says, man, 9 months already, wow. Sub baby. This sub baby's name is going to be Richard M. Nixon Jr. He is not a crook. Discordant Vol says the stream boss pain is Saturday Night Massacre. Is it? I don't know what that means.
and make hilarious little quips about it on late night television. And then they want to no-knock raid your house if they catch you getting a little bit too angry about it in a private message to a friend, which of course they'll be
literally not a thing that's happened.
Monitoring. But this is what democracy looks like.
Just making shit up.
Right? This is what democracy looks like. It's the cycle of tyranny. This is what always happens. And if you'd agree that we're living under a tyranny, then you should naturally expect any serious opposition to that tyranny to be persecuted to this extent. And that's why the GOP wants...
Tyranny is when trans people are allowed to exist and gay people are allowed to get married.
To distract you, you know.
And everyone uses the same water fountains. How horrifying.
They need you to think that they actually represent you. So they get on television and they say, that Brandon speech was rich, wasn't it? Yeah, we're so threatening. Give us money. Vote for us. We're going to get him this time. And then, well, one of these people is epically grilling somebody with tough questions in a congressional hearing. You're going to have the Brandon Stotzi, like, encircling Trump Tower. They're blocking off Fifth Avenue. It's like the Breaking Bad ending, you know? It's just Trump alone in his office. He's looking at the CCTV feed on the monitors. They're all rushing up the golden escalator. Badfinger starts playing. He's just slowly pacing around his office. Runs his hand across Tom Brady's Super Bowl helmet, Mike Tyson's boxing gloves, the Diet Coke button. He just picks up a red MAGA hat, you know, just looking at it. But we don't even see Trump directly in this shot, only slightly, only through reflection. His image is being reflected off the glass of a framed photograph of when he was meeting Kim Jong-un. And then he just collapses right to the ground, like right then and there. And we get the bird's eye shot, right? Because all the decades of big...
He gets that Heisenberg isn't a good guy, right? Like, I love Breaking Bad. It's a great show. And I love Walter White as a character. Not as a good guy, but as a character. You're not supposed to think Walter White's a good guy. He's not.
Max promoting the jab. You know, the big guy just collapses right there. God forbid that happen. I shouldn't even joke about that, seriously. No, you know what happens? He hits the Diet Coke button. And then these cans of Diet Coke, they're swinging down, and they're giving a bunch of black eyes to the Brandon secret police. It's like in Home Alone. Remember when they took out Trump's cameo in Home Alone 2? Talk about Orwell rolling in his grave right now.
Honestly, I think that scene is funnier that it's still in. Like, I have Home Alone 2, I think, on Blu-ray. I like that the scene is in there. It's kind of funny to me now. It's funnier. Like, Kevin, you had a chance, but I get it.
Yeah, Trump's on the balcony. He's overlooking them. If you guys had a...
Discordant Vol with 100 bits says, because John has the same relationship with masculinity as Walt does. Oof. 49% to level 8 with just under a minute left.
Enough? Or are you thirsty for more?
Yeah, Orwell was a socialist.
Just Diet Coke.
He was just very anti-Soviet Union and authoritarianism. Surprise.
Hands just raining down. Trump makes his escape through a secret elevator without detection. Remember, he's a nimble navigator.
Jesus Christ, Fast Lunacy. Fast Lunacy gives 50 tier 1 subs. Thank you. The lunacy is never-ending. Never-ending lunacy. Thank you.
But then he gets cornered, right? They've got a gun. Shoot him. Shoot him. I'm trying to shoot him, but they can't because the revolver, it's covered in melted Trump ice cream from a previous trap.
56% to level 11. Oh, I think we're getting close to the highest ever. Maybe. Did we get the highest ever, actually? I'm not sure.
So the gun, it won't fire. He's scrambling to pull back the hammer. And then look who it is. Just when all hope was lost. It's one of the Central Park Five. Trump, run! He just throws a bunch of cocaine on the police, just blankets them in cocaine, which he had on him because he's probably...
Oh, you think it was 13? Okay.
Still a criminal, but it's okay now because Trump realizes now that this guy who he thought was his enemy, who he spoke so unfavorably of so many years ago, is actually his friend, and he helped him. And then all these homeless people, all these tweakers and crackheads, they just mob the police. They just absolutely crawl all over these people. They're screaming, you know, and then Trump and the Central Park rapist, they exchange one last look before Trump runs off and he makes his escape. Sort of.
Lily Lovestuff says, I feel like anti-authoritarian George Orwell would be rolling in his grave for a different reason, aka people misunderstanding his work and invoking his name incorrectly.
An interesting ending there. Not really sure what John Hughes was trying to say with that, but anyways, that's why the GOP, who wasn't even named in this speech, in fact, they were even defended in this speech, that's why they have to pretend that it was about them, because that's how they distract you and manipulate you into giving them more money and power to do absolutely nothing to actually represent you or your interests, because it's not about what benefits you, it's about what benefits them, which in this case is just wearing the uniform of the opposition like it's a costume or something, because that comes with all the benefits of being in the opposition, the perceived nobility, the money, the support, but without the costs that come with being in the opposition, namely the total and unrelenting persecution. But like we said, Trump will never quit. His supporters will never quit. So it's not enough to have persecution. You have to have subversion. You have to take them down from within. You need a pressure release valve. You need someone like Ron DeSantis, who, again, I'm not saying there's like this grand coordinated conspiracy that he's in on, but it's simply a matter of fact that all of the leftover interests and forces within the Republican Party see that opportunity in DeSantis, whether he intends for that to happen or not. And the Democrats are fundamentally not threatened by him as a political figure, which...
I'm unsure how I feel about... I mean, I know how I feel about DeSantis. He's a big piece of shit. But in terms of his threat level versus Trump, on the one hand, DeSantis is way more palatable for centrists who aren't paying attention. He can at least talk like someone who is a politician. He can keep himself from saying the quiet part out loud a little easier. But on the same note, they might lose the crazies, which is basically what John is talking about here. A large part of Trump's base is there because he's a crude asshole who speaks at a second-grade level, right? So I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens. Tea with Goblin says, John has spent a lot of time thinking about this weird Trump Breaking Bad crossover. I dread to think what his Google history looks like. Vast Lunacy says, and Doyle called the left weak and obsessed with Saturday morning cartoon logic. He's fan-fictioning Trump's downfall based on tropes he doesn't even understand. And Chromatic Cuttlefish with 50 bits says, John Doyle's theater of mental erotica involves such a weird combination of Donald J. Trump and being oppressed. And then there's a hydrate. 59% to level 11 with a minute left.
We're about to get into, but first, I think it's important to look at the response that he gave to Joe Biden's declaration of war against American patriots. Because look, I'm just a guy asking questions, okay? I'm asking questions. That's all I'm doing. That's my job. Questions like, why is Ron DeSantis still allowed on social media, but Donald Trump isn't? Why is Ron DeSantis able to go on Fox?
DeSantis didn't get people to break into the Capitol and try and kill Congress people. So that's the main reason. Although Trump will probably get his Twitter back now that, you know, Musk is the owner.
Once, but Donald Trump isn't. Why did DeSantis choose to respond without acknowledging that this was a direct attack on Donald Trump? Because when he does this segment, he frames it like it's an attack on half the country, which I guess is true, but that implies that it was just Republican voters or people who vote for Republicans. That's what that means when politicians say half the country. You know, we hear this a million times a year. Because if it's just a partisan attack, you know, on Republican voters, well, then it's just politics as usual. Then it's no different from what we've been seeing for the last 50 years. It's just politics as usual. It's Democrats and Republicans, whatever. And then DeSantis goes on to say that it's an attack on people who disapprove of Joe Biden, people who dissent from his policies.
Thank you
That's
for the
an
level
interesting way to say it.
10 hype train, everyone. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Joe Biden was actually more precise with it. He said it's an attack on MAGA Republicans who are a clear and present danger to our democracy. Therefore, we need a domestic war on terror, like Bush's equivalent speech, prime people for the foreign war on terror. Mitch McConnell disagrees with Joe Biden's policies, and he dissents. So does David French and Jonah Goldberg. So do the Libertarians. But was that speech about them, people who just generally disagree with his policies? No, it was unambiguously about Trump and his supporters. But here it's framed as attacking Republicans who don't want him to get his way. It's a partisan attack on half the country. No, it wasn't partisan, it was ideological. And there is a difference because you can disagree with Joe Biden and also not support Donald Trump. Like, this is the position of virtually all neocons. So my question as a guy who asks questions is, why in this nearly 10-minute segment did Ron DeSantis not once say Donald Trump's name? Why did he not once say MAGA? Why is he framing it this way? This is the literal attempted erasure of Donald Trump and MAGA from Republican politics. There's no other way to put it. Joe Biden,
God, that would be nice,
was so clear in his speech about who he was talking about and the message that he was sending, but Republicans ignore it. And they just want to go back to the standard talking points, because the secret that they don't yet feel empowered enough to say aloud is that they actually agree. They actually want Trump gone too. That's why in this segment, they just kept pivoting back to what would be considered DeSantis's resume, you know, blaming Democrats for inflation, lockdowns, rising prices, etc. But Biden didn't mention any of those issues in his speech. Not a single one. And to that you might say, well, obviously Biden's speech was just political theater, and we should focus on what really matters, which are issues such as those. Really? Why? Why not respond to the speech directly? Things have actually been this bad before, materially speaking. Like, we've seen inflation before. We've had lockdowns thanks to governors from both parties for years now. So why not respond to what's new? Why not respond to the first time in the history of our country where we have a sitting president do nothing less than declare war on the tens of millions of Americans who supported and still do support Donald Trump?
Is John not familiar with the Civil War? Lincoln was a Republican. He knows that, right?
Isn't that worth mentioning? But if
Like, there have absolutely been times in history, and that's just the big one. We're not talking about things like the Whiskey Rebellion or any of the smaller insurrection attempts that have happened throughout American history. Like, John, you're well-read enough, I would think, to know about these things and recognize that domestic terrorist threats, or just domestic threats in general, are not uncommon in American history. It's just that throughout the 20th century, it wasn't as big of a thing. We were dealing with international issues often in terms of threats to the nation. Air quote.
Frame it by focusing on the issues, well, then it's just politics as usual, right? You ignore the fact that our current system is designed to create these issues and have the American people foot the bill while you have these people play ping pong about who's to blame. You ignore the questions of legitimacy that are being asked of that system, and you get back to the politics as usual. To the, well, President Brandon's trying to distract from how he's going to get his butt kicked when we vote all our guys in office.
H-Beard says we never really had lockdowns. Republicans are just toddler babies, and what we did have ended a year and a half ago. Do these people tie their own shoes?
And then they can do what, exactly? What are they going to do when they get voted in? With money raised off Donald Trump's name, which you won't even say, nothing, so that they can do nothing. Joe Biden delivering a speech that amounts to a declaration of war against any threat to the political establishment, and then Ron DeSantis gets on there and wants to talk about inflation and lockdowns. Important issues, yes. But the bottom...
Are they? Like, inflation I get, but are lockdowns in terms of... It's 2022, John! H-Baird says we never really had... I just read that.
Until you fundamentally restructure the system that we currently have in this country, you're never going to escape those issues. And in fact, you're going to be dealing with a lot worse than those issues. You might be able to slow it down for a couple years, but you will never be able to stop it completely, let alone reverse it. And for some reason, DeSantis is being propped up by all of the people who are of that cloth, of the weak leadership, of the cloth of those who sold us out. Does that mean that DeSantis is one of them? Not necessarily, and I really hope not, but frankly, it remains to be seen. The point being that in the meantime...
He's going to get in line behind DeSantis so hard if he wins the nomination.
And he's being propped up...
Unless maybe Trump runs third party, if that were to happen, which would be hilarious.
...by all of these people who want to return to politics as usual, because they still naively have a general faith in the system, and or they're making a lot of money through it, even though the rest of us are suffering and our country is being destroyed. Oh, well, just imagine. Listen to that speech, but replace MAGA Republicans with black people, or Jews, or women, or even Democrats. How awful. Okay, yeah, but you don't even have to do that. The speech was written to convey that already, except MAGA Republican is just a proxy for normal white people.
No, it's not. It's a proxy for fucking fascist.
Those are the people being persecuted and disenfranchised by the system that...
It's not really a proxy for anything. It's just identifying
neocons put so much faith into. Whereas Trump is the only candidate who actually says he's going to fire 50,000 federal employees if he's elected. That's the deep state. These other characters will just leave them intact for the next Democrat administration to use twice as hard against us. That's what always happens, right? Because the last 100 years of right-wing politics in America can be fairly well summarized by refusing to stand by people because we're afraid of what the left says, and then we wonder why we've lost our country. Maybe because the establishment only seriously targets those who it perceives to be a significant threat. But then we throw those people to the wolves when we see what that targeting actually looks like in practice. That's why it's not about the MAGA Republicans just opposing his political agenda, but specifically, and very specifically, being in support of a particular agenda. The only one that actually threatens the status quo. You know, you have a political agenda. Yeah, well, maybe if you were comfortable with the idea of politicizing things like 50 years ago, now we wouldn't have to be arguing about why children shouldn't have their genitals mutilated. Think about that.
Once again, no one in the United States is doing gender-affirming surgery on children. Not a thing. Made up.
You eat food now. You digest that food. You convert it into calories, which are now spent on that, on constructing arguments why this shouldn't be happening to children. That's what the right-wing establishment in this country has done for you. Oh, well, but DeSantis is more electable. This is not true in the very literal sense of the term. DeSantis is not, all things considered, more likely to win an election than Donald Trump. That's just plainly not true. What you're trying to say is that DeSantis is less problematic than Trump. He has less baggage than Trump, etc. And you mistakenly think that this translates to a higher likelihood of electoral success, but this just isn't the case. And it's also a fundamental misread of our current political climate. And again, I'm not criticizing DeSantis. I'm really not. I'm sure it sounds that way, but rather I'm just attacking this image of him that people are astroturfing and spreading around, because that's the image that they're going to try to use and are trying to use to discredit and take down Trump. That's really the most offensive part to me. They're trying to market DeSantis as something he's not, which is just unnatural. It's disordered. It literally evokes the same response to me as when I see a transgender person. Like, there's just something not right going on, because it'd be one thing if they were
John, again, you're neurotic. You looking at another person just living their life and thinking, I'm uncomfortable. That's neuroticism. Seek therapy.
Marketing like this guy who could actually be the Trumpism without Trump that they want so badly, but they're not. They're like lying and manufacturing this image of based Ron DeSantis, and it's like not even the same
Water down the wrong pipe
thing. And they're too arrogant and stupid to understand that the whole idea is being pushed in the first place by very nefarious forces in society who are threatened by Donald Trump, who hate Donald Trump, and who want to take him out. And so they're using these useful idiots to do so. Okay, that's it. We've dipped our toes in too many times. Let's just do it. DeSantis versus Trump. Let's talk about it. Conversation is awesome. We're asking questions. And this is...
Chromatic Cuttlefish says, this is literally just high-speed white nationalist word association. Yeah.
Going to be tough love, but it's necessary, okay? I'm commanded to speak the truth. I have to warn you. This is my midnight ride against the neocon establishment. Here's the bottom line. There is absolutely no good reason to run DeSantis instead of Donald Trump in 2024.
Listen, my children, you shall hear of the cringy speech of John Revere. Discordant Vol says, I recommend 100 cc's of minding your own business, Doyle.
There is no indication that he would be more popular and therefore more electable. There is no indication that he would get more done in office than Trump. And there is no indication that he's as good on the issues as Trump. There is, however, every indication that he is being propped up by the establishment GOP as the alternative to Trump, as Trump without the baggage, which is being done because these people just want to return to business as usual. The DeSantis fans might not recognize this. DeSantis himself might not recognize this, but it's obviously the case. It is so obviously the case. He's a great governor, but it's really easy to have that title when 90% of the GOP governors are totally incompetent. The idea that he can even hold a candle to everything that Donald Trump has done for the advancement of actually conservative policies and attitudes in this country is misaligned with reality, let alone that he deserves the nomination in 2024 by stealing the torch from Donald Trump, who lit it in the first place. And again, I like Ron DeSantis, but nothing that I've said about him so far or that we'll get into here is incorrect. It's all true. So it's now incumbent upon you to explain why the fact that he's supported by every neocon from David French to Paul Ryan is actually based and a threat to the system. Like, that's your job to explain, along with the other 100 red flags that we'll talk about, which again are literally just factual. If you want DeSantis in 2024, then you have to explain away these things and why they're not actually problematic. So anyways, the first thing we have to address is all the silly arguments against Trump. These are things that people just throw out as if they even matter, usually said hysterically, such as, oh, he's old. Yeah, who even cares? There's nothing that would tell us.
You guys literally spent so much time talking about Joe Biden's age, which, as I've said, I agree is an issue, but if it's an issue for Biden, it's an issue for Trump because they're almost the exact same age. It does matter, John. We should not be led by geriatrics. These are people who should have retired decades ago.
That except you.
They have no idea what the world is like.
Screaming about his age, like he's high energy, he's sharp as a tack, and more importantly, the people that he attracts that would staff his administration, that's the most important part. Even assuming he becomes like senile or something, like these are the most intelligent right-wing people in the country. Authentically
low bar?
Right-wing people in the country. And they all want Donald Trump. Alternatives to this are just going to be staffed by these like wannabe populist types who just ultimately don't get it. But anyways, the first real one is this idea that Trump is off-putting to the suburbs. I don't think this is true, especially given our current political situation where we're at such a state of turmoil. Like we've said, you've got like deliberate targeting of children. At this point, people...
Not really, John. Again, the anti-trans culture war bullshit, which is weird because they use drag queens as a center of this. And it seems weird to me that it doesn't come up in conversations more. I'm pretty sure Republicans don't know that drag queens are not the same thing as trans people. And that, like, drag queens are mostly, like, cis gay men. Mostly. Again, there are trans women who also do drag, but mostly it's gay cis men. Why do they always bring up drag queen stuff when it comes to trans people? Not that it matters anyway, because the vast majority of these things are fucking harmless.
You just want somebody who's going to strike fear into the hearts of all the people who've done this to them and just basically tell them, like, to F off. Also, what's never acknowledged for some reason is that being palatable to the base doesn't necessarily inspire people who have never voted before or people who have lost faith in the system to go get out and vote, which is something that Trump is uniquely able to do. And adjacent to this is this whole, like, oh, well, Trump has too much baggage. Again, everyone has baggage. It is just a matter of who the media and who the establishment decides to target and who they don't. Moreover,
Trump has more baggage than most people.
Literally what baggage? It's all just media hysteria. And you know that. You do. Whether you want to make the conscious decision to bend the knee to that media hysteria because you think it will benefit you.
The media hysteria of someone being a rapist, tax-avoiding piece of shit.
Long run?
Who may have ties to foreign entities that want to use him in order to destabilize political enemies.
That's another question. But ultimately, that's all it is. But that said, there is one criticism that I actually agree with, but I don't think it disqualifies him. That's the promotion of the jab. Look, I'm much more of a pragmatist than I am a purist. I'm much more worried by exceptionally bad behavior that was so bad that it stood out from the average. And you have to remember that literally everybody was promoting this with a handful of exceptions. But everybody in the mainstream was promoting this, even Ron DeSantis. And it reminds me of when leftists are like, the founding fathers, they owned slaves. And it's like, yeah, that was normal back then. But
that's a bad argument. Most people did not own slaves, for the record. But no, it doesn't matter if it was normalized or whatever to own other human beings. You should also be able to use that to cast doubt on the moral conscience of the people you're talking about. What does it say about their outlook on the world and how it should be governed if to them it is normal to own other people? I'm not telling you you have to hate that person. They're dead. I assure you your hate will be wasted. I am telling you that you should use a critical eye for their beliefs because their beliefs existed within the context of them also believing that women shouldn't have the right to vote, which John thinks is based because he's a fucking fascist, and thinking that people who weren't white deserved to be enslaved. Like, I don't think this is hard to understand. Hydrate.
To be clear, I'm not excusing this. I think it was wrong. I think it was bad. I'm not excusing it. I'm just disarming it a little bit. Because to be...
yes. Disarming slavery. Something we all need.
Fair, everybody in the mainstream promoted this at some point. So where's the line drawn? Like, how much worse is this person for promoting it for X amount of days more than this other person? Moreover, who else do we have here? Show me someone who didn't promote it and who is ready and capable to be at the level of Donald Trump right now. Like, we just don't have those options. Also, frankly, nobody went to go get it because Trump told them to. Like, he was getting booed at his rallies, rightfully so, for talking about this. So as long as you trusted your instincts, you'll be fine. So anyways, the last one is actually the one that annoys...
Is he genuine? I don't know if my opinion of John Doyle is too high because he wears a suit and stuff, and if my cognitive biases make me think he's smarter than he is. But is John Doyle genuinely so stupid that he's not vaccinated? I always took John as he's using this to get his audience to believe in fascist shit. Is John genuinely so dumb that he's not vaccinated? That's hilarious.
Annoys me the most out of all of them because, quite honestly, people sound like spoiled brats when they say this. This is well, Trump didn't get anything done. Trump didn't do anything. It's really easy to sit here and criticize Trump for not better handling onslaught, which has never been seen before in the history of our country, and which was precisely brought about to stop him. Like, people are just spoiled. People like to forget that before Donald Trump, people like Jeb Bush were governing Florida. This is what Florida politics looked like before Donald Trump. This is what...
Helminato says, go easy on him. A lot of kids are scared of shots.
Right-wing politics looked like before Donald Trump. People like to forget that before Donald Trump announced his candidacy, Jeb Bush was universally predicted to be the GOP nominee. It was universally understood that we were going to get to continue the post-war paradigm of American politics through the illusion of choice that was, well, hey, at least we get to decide between another Clinton and another Bush. Like, this is just the way things were.
Chromatic Cuttlefish says, of course he's vaccinated. He's just lying to his dipshit anti-vax followers. It's like Fox News. See, that's what I'm thinking, but the way he said that other thing felt genuine, which is weird from John.
The things people complain about Trump not doing not only would not have been done by any of these other people, but the only reason people realize they could be done is because of Donald Trump. Like, do you understand how many A-list political careers were destroyed by Donald Trump? Apparently people don't understand this, because on the other side of that coin, they also don't understand how many political careers were only made possible because of Donald Trump, including Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, which I think DeSantis even understands, by the way, which is why even with all of these people whispering in his ear, trying to get him to try to take on Trump in 2024, even DeSantis understands that that would be political suicide for him, which it would be. So I don't think it's necessarily going to happen, but I still think it's good for us to prepare for if it does, since that's what's being implied by all the actions of the GOP right now. But all the DeSantis people, they don't understand why that is, why that may be. They just want to share the articles. Oh, DeSantis takes on big tech. Oh, DeSantis actually gets stuff done. And then you look at the bill, it just like legally defines what a social media company is, among a few other things, but it ultimately has no teeth. Even Greg Abbott, nobody likes Greg Abbott. Even Greg Abbott's big tech bill actually had some teeth. It actually protected Texans, gave them the ability to fight back against being censored on social media by these big tech companies, as opposed to just political.
I said the N-word and now I got banned on Twitter, and that's censorship.
Candidates, but nobody made this big epic display about it because they're not trying to prime people for Abbott 2024. But that's how they ran the story for DeSantis. Oh, well, but DeSantis is better at governing. DeSantis is better at wielding power. Why are you attacking the best governor?
MH Darkbeast says, speaking of trans people, Hannah, I was shocked to discover that Tiffany's boyfriend, Damian Baylock from Bride of Chucky, was played by a trans woman? Oh, okay. H. Baird says, how much you want to bet Doyle quotes Jeb at every live performance? Clap. Please clap.
Please clap.
In the country. Is this the case? Can we have this conversation now? Do you understand the difference between governing in a red state versus governing as the commander-in-chief? Do you understand how terrible the average Republican governor is? You probably don't even know the names of these people. They are so bad at their jobs that, yeah, DeSantis looks great by comparison. This is the guy you want to carry, not even carry the torch. You want him to steal the torch. This is the guy you want to steal the torch. The guy who, frankly, is the best of an overall not so great situation. Like, this is your guy. And again, I'm not criticizing him, only the way they're portraying him. Is he really that great of a governor? Or is he just better than like the incredibly incompetent people that we have in the other couple dozen red states? But hey, maybe I'm wrong, right? I could be totally wrong. Okay, I have another question. What is preventing more from happening? DeSantis is a great governor. Why can't he be greater? Think about it. The Florida state legislature is controlled by Republicans, and by a significant margin, and it has been for a while. Like, there are over 30 more Republicans than there are Democrats in the state House. There are about 7 more Republicans than there are Democrats in the state Senate. These state congressmen are typically very right-wing. So why isn't more being done? Bro, it's not that simple, obviously, right? So what do you expect to happen in D.C. with far less advantageous margins and far more extreme attacks? It's a totally different ballgame. And I want DeSantis to succeed. I wanted to make Florida even redder. So why aren't they banning Drag Queen Story Hour? Why aren't they passing bills that challenge gay
pretty sure that would just be elite, like unconstitutional
marriage, forcing a Supreme Court ruling? Why aren't they forming
that would again, well, the Supreme Court, that'd be bad.
Entirely new statewide curriculums? Why aren't they enforcing obscenity laws to protect children from pornography? Why aren't they banning schools from indoctrinating children into LGBT culture? Oh, well, you know, there was that Don't Say Gay bill, right, which said you have to just wait until 4th grade for that. That bill was toothless. Oh, hey, we just have to wait until 4th grade to discuss anal sex and genital mutilation with children. Like,
again, complete straw man. All right, I think I'm going to save where we are, and we can finish this another time, because we still have like an hour left in this. And we've been going for a little over 3 hours, so we will save this for next time, and I will raid into someone doing something, hopefully not as annoying as having to listen to John Doyle talk for any amount of time. Stone Corbell says, John is literally doing that speech by Mark Antony from Julius Caesar where he keeps calling Brutus an honorable man but keeps denigrating him over and over. He's trying really hard not to upset some of his audience that likes DeSantis. If he thought he could get away with it, I think he'd say much worse things about Ron, but who knows.
It should mean nothing.
We will rate Occult Comics. Speaking of Elon Musk mockery, best one is Jake's. Elon Musk. Oh, God. Alright. Have a good night, everyone. I will see you soon. You're all wonderful. Have a great night. Vote! Everyone vote tomorrow. Please, for the love of God, vote. And no matter what, it'll be okay. See you guys later.